My brother ruined my life by fabricating evidence of my affairs, but after 6 years, the truth finally came out. My high school love, Rachel, was 45 years old and I, a 45-year-old guy, was her spouse. Together, we have 4 daughters. Ashley, 18, Olivia, 21, Madison, 22, and Lauren, 24. We fell in love when we were both 14 years old during our freshman year. I can still clearly recall our English class when I first met her. I assisted her in picking up the books she had dropped. It was our reality, but it seemed like something from an adolescent film. From the first time they laid eyes on Rachel, my parents, Robert, 68, and Pamela, 66, fell in love. She was their unborn daughter. Mom would teach her our family dishes and invite her over for Sunday dinners even when they were first dating. Dad gave us relationship advice all the time and treated her like his own daughter. He would say things like, "Think before making big decisions and communication is key." Our relationship was shaped by those statements for many years. This parting is made much more agonizing by the unique memories that each of my girls has. Our oldest, Lauren, was my shadow when she was younger. In the park close to our house, I spent numerous weekends teaching her how to ride a bike. Like the older children, she was determined to learn without the use of training wheels. Her delighted smile brightened the entire neighborhood when she eventually succeeded. As she had envisioned, she is now a prosperous lawyer. When Madison, our artistic soul, was 15, she converted our garage into her art studio. I constructed an easel and arranged her materials to assist her in setting it up. That area became her haven after we transformed it over the course of a summer. Our living room is adorned with a family portrait that she painted. It was her first significant composition. If it's still there, I wonder. The best part of my weekends was watching Olivia play soccer. Until I had to miss them all, I never missed a single one. When my mother contacted me at work to tell me that I had made the varsity team as a freshman, I could still hear her happy voice. She learned how to play for me, and we practiced penalty kicks in the backyard for hours. At games, she constantly claimed that I was her fortunate charm. My tiny coding partner was Ashley, my tech-savvy youngest child. When she was 10 years old, we worked together to build her first computer. We would work on basic games late into the night since she was so eager to learn programming. She came up with the concept for an app that would use puzzles to teach children math. When everything collapsed, we were halfway through the development process. Our first few years of marriage were both magical and difficult. During our senior year, we were both pleased and afraid to learn that Rachel was expecting Lauren. I chose to work at a nearby manufacturing company while attending night classes rather than enrolling in college right away. While raising Lauren, Rachel worked part-time to complete her degree. Despite barely making ends meet and living in a small one-bedroom apartment, we were content. We learned collaboration and resilience over those years. But my 43-year-old younger brother James was always a specter over our joy. I was too trusting to notice the signs properly, but they were there from the start. James would make excuses to be around us even in high school. He would offer to drop Rachel off at our favorite cafe on date nights or offer to drive her home while I had basketball practice. I now understand that James had a pattern of compulsive behavior. He followed his middle school teacher to the grocery store and sent her letters since he was obsessed with her before Rachel. It was dismissed by our parents as a harmless crush. He developed an obsession with a girl in his high school class, making up intricate tales about their connection when they had hardly spoken. It was written off as a teenage drama once more. When Rachel and I got engaged, it was the first big warning sign. James became furious rather than merely disapproving. When he arrived at Rachel's place of employment, he created a commotion that nearly cost her her job. He was yelling that I had taken her away from him and that they were destined to be together. Rachel was afraid. She told me everything right away, and that's when I started thinking about severing my relationship with James. However, my parents stepped in. They persuaded us that James needed assistance rather than rejection. We attended family therapy sessions for months. James expressed regret, claimed to have changed and seemed to accept our relationship. Although I now question whether it was all part of his long-term plan, he even gave a heartfelt speech during our wedding. James became more and more involved in our life over time. He positioned himself as our children's favorite uncle, helped me land a job at his company, and started showing up at family get-togethers all the time. He was especially close to Madison and Lauren, frequently bringing them out and purchasing them pricey presents. I assumed he was simply making amends for his previous actions by being a good uncle. In hindsight, I can see how he methodically gained the trust of each member of my family. He supported Rachel's professional networking, helped my parents with their money, and was always ready to provide a helping hand. In contrast to my hectic schedule and frequent business travels, he positioned himself as the dependable, stable sibling. I needed the business travels to advance in my job, but James took advantage of me. Some of the things he would say to Rachel were, "Mike's always away, but I'm here if you need anything." While I was away, he offered to assist with school functions and home repairs. I was appreciative of his assistance at the moment. I can now understand that it was all a part of his deception. Everything broke apart 6 years ago. I had been at our company's West Coast office for a week on business. It was a presentation for a big project that might get you promoted. I missed Rachel and the girls so much that I contacted her every night to tell her everything that had happened during the day. I also participated in video conferences with the girls, listening to Madison's most recent art project ideas and providing remote assistance with Ashley's math assignments. My whole family was in our living room when I got home. James was there, appearing serious, while Rachel and the girls were crying. Tension was pervasive in the air. Rachel exclaimed, "How could you do this to us?" with a look of fury in her eyes that I will never forget. James had meticulously planned his attack. He pulled out a folder that seemed to be unquestionable proof of my adultery. Intimate text exchanges, hotel receipts, and even pictures of me entering a hotel with another woman were all there. He asserted that the woman was a coworker who, feeling guilty, had told him everything. The images were modified with skill. Later, I found out that they were staged to appear suspicious and were taken at official business meetings. Although the texts were entirely false, they contained information about my travel and work schedule that could only have been known by someone with insider knowledge. James had made things appear genuine by using his position at our organization. I made a valiant effort to protect myself, but long before I entered that room, James had turned everyone against me. He had been subtly hinting at my odd behavior to Rachel for weeks. My daughters had been persuaded by him that I was behaving differently. He had even expressed his concern about my decisions to my parents. I'm still troubled by the nightmare of the next several hours. Lauren, who had always been my strongest supporter, yelled that she would never forgive me and hurled her house key at me. Even though Madison was crying so much that she was having trouble speaking, her words, "I hate you," were audible. My daughter Olivia, who used to race to me after every soccer match, was unable to even look at me. "Why did Daddy do this to us?" Ashley, who was only 12 at the time, turned to Rachel and questioned. The most agonizing response was probably from my parents. Dad, who had taught me everything I needed to know to be a decent spouse and father, and who had always been proud of me, looked at me with utter disgust. His statement, "No son of mine would do this to his family," is still ringing in my mind. You would end this divorce quickly and amicably if you still had any dignity. That evening, I was expelled with only a bag of clothing. In the weeks that followed, I made frantic efforts to establish my innocence. I spent almost all of my savings on hiring 3 different private investigators. After weeks of searching for the supposed other woman, the first private investigator found that she had moved to a different state. Despite identifying several discrepancies, the second investigator was unable to demonstrate that the hotel invoices were fakes. In fact, the third PI nearly discovered James's manipulation before abruptly and mysteriously abandoning the case. James had threatened his family. I found out later. The divorce process was harsh and swift. Rachel was furious and distraught and didn't want to interact with me. My daughters blocked my social media accounts and phone number. I only made contact through attorneys. I lost everything in 6 months, including my work, most of my friends, my home, and my family. At the office, James had been deliberately spreading accusations that I had a history of having inappropriate connections with coworkers. The stigma followed me, and clients began asking not to work with me, even though nothing was formal. I started again after moving to a little apartment across town. The isolation was debilitating. Sometimes all I wanted was a glimpse of my girls, so I would sit in my car outside my former home. Every milestone I missed was like a stab to my heart. I couldn't get close, so I watched Lauren's law school graduation from the parking lot. I sent Madison an anonymous purchase of her favorite piece from her first art show. I cheered alone in my flat while watching Olivia's college soccer championships on the internet. I learned about Ashley's successes in the science fair from the local newspaper. However, nothing could have prepared me for Lauren's wedding's agony. Through a social media post from a common acquaintance, I became aware of it. I lost my role in my moment when I saw James escorting my daughter down the aisle in the pictures. I was in a dark place all day thinking about things I'm not proud of. At that point, I picked up my cat, Max, from the neighborhood shelter. To be honest, he saved my life more than once, and he needed someone just as much as I did. My only means of escape became work. I shifted departments, switched companies, and threw myself fully into my job. I received 2 promotions, but without my family to celebrate with, accomplishment felt meaningless. My background was unknown to the new employer, Yet I was never able to build strong bonds with my coworkers. How do you justify not talking about your family, eating lunch by yourself, or going to office parties? Over the years, I made a few unsuccessful attempts at dating. I was never sure how to respond to the first question, which was always about family. How can you explain to someone that your children despise you, that your brother methodically ruined your life, and that your whole family thinks you're a cheater? Most first dates ended without a second date. Every holiday served as a reminder of my losses. Thanksgiving meant consuming just microwave meals. Christmas was spent drinking too much and viewing old home videos. My girls and my own birthdays were the worst. Because I couldn't stand to see the unopened presents in my apartment, I continued to buy them presents each year and kept them in a storage unit. Then everything changed 3 days ago. An unidentified number called me. My mother was crying. Although she refused to provide anything over the phone, she said that they had learned the truth about James's deceit. She pleaded with me to meet with them, stating that everyone wanted to make amends and was remorseful. Feeling numb, I hung up. 6 years of loneliness, suffering, and memories lost. My daughters spent 6 years growing up without their father. James lived the life he had stolen from me for 6 years. That cannot be resolved by a simple apology. I've made touch with a legal practice that focuses on defamation and family law disputes. The attorney thinks we may have a good case, particularly if my family now has proof of James's dishonesty. Reconciliation is not something I'm interested in. Justice is what I desire. I want James to be held legally responsible for ruining my life. Some may believe that my family should forgive me because I'm being too harsh. James didn't simply betray my confidence, though. My whole life was methodically ruined by him. He poisoned my girls against me, took away my fatherly position, and robbed me of years I will never get back. How can you forgive someone who denied you the opportunity to watch your kids grow up? Who caused you to miss the wedding of your daughter? Who deliberately and methodically turned your whole family against you? I'm meeting with the attorneys tomorrow to go over our alternatives. My mom asked for a meeting, but I haven't replied yet. Although I have mixed feelings about it, I would like to know how they found the truth. The harm has been done. I'll provide an update as soon as I learn more. I have to prioritize the legal issues and preserve my own emotional well-being throughout this time. Update 1. My parents just presented me with startling proof at my meeting with my legal team. These are the events of the past 2 days. It was eye-opening to meet with my lawyers. They clarified that based on the information my parents gave, James might be charged with several crimes. My mother gave me a big folder with the original, unaltered pictures, which make it obvious how James altered them. Along with bank statements demonstrating payments for fabricating hotel receipts, they also found email exchanges between James and a professional photo editing firm. During a drunken confrontation with Rachel last week, the truth was revealed in a surprising way. By declaring he didn't design all of this simply to lose her, James unintentionally made a mistake. Rachel began investigating after reading this message and discovered a hidden email account on their shared computer. Everything was in the emails. Correspondence with several individuals he hired to assist him. Complete records of his 6-year plan to ruin my life, and even early drafts of the fictitious texts he wrote. Significant progress has been made in the police investigation. James's co-conspirators, including the friend who assisted in making fictitious hotel reservations and the photo editor, have previously been interviewed. By testifying against James, these people are now assisting the authorities in the hopes of avoiding being charged themselves. James's scrupulous record-keeping is especially unsettling. On his laptop, Rachel found a password-protected journal, which she gave to my lawyers. He started planning even before my marriage to Rachel, according to the journal. He spent a lot of time writing about waiting for the right time to carry out his plan. After learning that James intimidated other co-workers and utilized resources to falsify proof in order to support his lies, my former company opened an internal inquiry. Compensation for wrongful firing is being seriously discussed, and the HR department is getting ready to issue a formal apology. The evidence is growing. Experts in forensics discovered erased documents that demonstrated he had attempted similar schemes twice previously but had not carried them out correctly. The degree of forethought is astounding. Rachel is completely assisting investigators and has filed for divorce from James. The worst thing has been discovering how he took advantage of my daughters. His journal entries describe how he poisoned them against me in a methodical manner. He would deliberately sow doubts, misrepresent my statements, and fabricate circumstances to cast me in a negative light. One of Ashley's pals was even paid by him to say they had seen me with another woman. More evidence was found during today's police search on James's office. They discovered USB disks with backup copies of his falsified evidence, several burner phones, and more counterfeit documents he hadn't yet utilized. In order to keep up his network of falsehoods, they also found a list of the persons he was blackmailing. Considering the severity and length of his offenses, my attorneys are certain that they will seek the harshest punishments possible. According to them, James might be sentenced to up to 15 years in prison and could be awarded millions of dollars in civil damages. They have recommended me to forego all communication with my family for the time being, stating that everything must go through the appropriate legal procedures. Another victim has been identified during the investigation. James planned a similar plot against his college roommate and the roommate's girlfriend 20 years earlier. This former victim got in touch with my attorneys to tell his experience after learning about my case. I'm continuing to concentrate on the court case rather than any possible family reconciliation. We're filing the civil complaint tomorrow, and the grand jury hearing is next week. Now, it's important to make sure James bears the full repercussions of his conduct. When there are noteworthy developments in the court case, I'll provide an update. Update 2, the legal process is moving more quickly than anticipated. I need to share a few significant changes that have happened since my last report. James was taken into custody at his place of employment yesterday morning. He was overheard making calls about erasing evidence, which an employee immediately reported to the police and the company's security. He attempted to remove files from his work computer as he was being arrested, but everything had already been secured by the IT department. His response to being caught was telling. He remarked, "She was supposed to be mine anyway," without refuting anything. Today, the grand jury indictment was delivered. They returned their decision in less than 2 hours since the evidence was so strong. In her 20 years of experience, the prosecutor described it as one of the most blatant instances of planned hatred she has ever witnessed. James's actual character eventually came to light during police questioning. He sobbed uncontrollably and disclosed more information about his obsession. He had apparently been surreptitiously filming Rachel for years, gathering thousands of hours of video from covert cameras in their home. This is being handled by the police as a distinct criminal surveillance case. An even more alarming discovery came from the company's internal investigation. James had been embezzling money to finance his plan. He created fictitious vendor accounts and had been embezzling money for years to cover the costs of the different individuals he employed to assist in fabricating the evidence against me. Separate charges are now being pressed by the firm. There have been conflicting responses from my daughter to these disclosures. Lauren has been going over all the evidence because she is a lawyer. We spoke directly for the first time in 6 years when she called me today. At first, she was unable to talk through her emotions. When she was able to speak, she described how James had played on everyone's anxieties and vulnerabilities in a unique way. James had offered to help sell some of her artwork, but Madison found that it was actually stashed away in a storage facility he rented. To keep her financially reliant on him, he had been taking her work and lying to her about it. She is pursuing separate theft accusations. Olivia discovered tapes of James paying her college soccer coach to bench her during crucial matches that I might have attended. He wanted to make sure that I couldn't use sports to get back in touch with her. The NCAA is currently investigating the matter on its own. Ashley's admission was the most devastating. She discovered journal entries in which James described how, prior to everything collapsing, he purposely ruined the coding project we were working on. Knowing how important that shared interest was to our relationship, he had paid someone to hack and contaminate our work. Additional evidence has been discovered during Rachel's divorce procedures. He had been concealing substantial assets, including real estate bought under false pretenses, according to their joint tax forms. Even before our divorce, the forensic accountants were able to track down money transactions to offshore accounts. The extent of James's deceit has crushed my parents. When Dad found out about the concealed cameras in their home, he also suffered a little heart attack. James had been watching every member of the family, gathering information that he could use to control them. He kept records on everyone's vulnerabilities, secrets, and intimate moments. Today, the report from the criminal psychologist was made public. According to the report, James has one of the worst cases of obsessive personality disorder and psychopathic tendencies they have ever seen. According to his notebooks, he carefully planned every aspect of the devastation of my life, viewing it as an art form. Victims from the past have kept coming forward. Similar methods from James's background have been reported by 2 other families, though they are not as complex as what he did to me. These incidents, which date back to his time in college, demonstrate a distinct pattern of worsening conduct. Given the evidence that James had established a tiny network of blackmailed people who assisted him in maintaining his deceit, the prosecutor is now attempting to bring additional organized crime charges against James. Some were people he had financially compromised, and others were other professionals he had snuck on. I've kept my distance from efforts at family reconciliation in favor of assisting in the development of the most compelling legal argument. My attorneys claim that with the overwhelming amount of evidence, James's conviction is all but certain. Now their attention is on making sure he gets the harshest punishment imaginable. Although the tale has garnered media interest, I have turned down every invitation to be interviewed. I'm still focused on pursuing justice within the judicial system rather than going public. Nevertheless, a number of James's accomplices have begun speaking with reporters, exposing the entire scope of his network of deception. Next week, following the preliminary hearing, I'll provide another update. I'm currently preparing for what is expected to be a historic case in criminal justice and family law with my legal team. The conclusions of the preliminary hearing are more important than anyone could have predicted. I wanted to hold off on sharing this update until everything was finalized. Although James entered a guilty plea to all charges, the events in the courtroom were surprising. Against the advice of his attorney, he insisted on making a public statement. He described his entire plan for 45 minutes, not with regret but with a sickening sense of pride. He expressed no remorse, calling it his masterpiece of revenge. The judge's response was extraordinary. She disregarded the usual sentence criteria after hearing James's statement, pointing to his pathological pride and obvious determination to commit another crime. In order to run each count consecutively rather than concurrently, she imposed the maximum penalty. James will be imprisoned for 25 years with no chance of release for 18 of those years. James provided fresh details about additional victims throughout his statement, going beyond the incidents we were already aware of. In other states, he had tried similar tactics against 3 other families. His crimes may result in federal prosecution, according to the FBI's interstate investigation. His offshore accounts were the most startling discovery. He had been operating a consulting business for other compulsive people, teaching them how to ruin relationships and families, the forensic accountants found out. He had customers in several different nations. Now, Interpol is involved. In her testimony, Rachel described discovering a secret chamber in their basement that was stocked with monitors and monitoring gear. In addition to monitoring their home, he had set up cameras in my office, apartment, and even my vehicle. It was military-grade surveillance technology, according to the technical expert who inspected the arrangement. Ashley, my youngest daughter, made significant progress in her analysis of James's computer systems. She discovered encrypted files using her coding expertise, demonstrating that he had been preparing to grow his scam. He had meticulous records on the families of my co-workers, ready to ruin several relationships at once if I ever came close to establishing my innocence. The company's security mechanisms were completely redesigned as a result of their analysis. They found that James had used persuasion and extortion to undermine almost every department. In his own testimony, the CEO described discovering proof that James had been selling company secrets to finance his complex schemes. As an attorney, Lauren has been assisting the prosecution in constructing cases for James's other victims. She discovered a trend that went all the way back to his high school years. He had spent more than 25 years honing his craft. He had developed a network of enablers during his life, according to her inquiry. Betrayal Shadow, an exhibition at Madison's Art Gallery, showcased pieces she produced while dealing with this experience. She openly challenged a number of James's collaborators who were there at the event without their knowledge. Video recordings of their confessions served as proof for further charges. Olivia found out that James had been following her college friends, gathering damaging material to keep them quiet. She is currently developing procedures to stop similar manipulation schemes in college athletics by collaborating with school security across the country. Our family's psychological effects have resulted in an unforeseen development. Numerous prestigious colleges are examining the case as an illustration of persistent psychological manipulation. In order to improve detection and prevention tactics for incidents like this one, research teams are examining James's techniques. A support group for families impacted by pathological liars and manipulators has been established by my parents. They have discovered 5 further instances of James interfering in the lives of other families, some of which go back decades, thanks to this network. Due to these disclosures, a number of cold cases involving questionable family splits have been reopened. The judge combined compensatory and punitive penalties and sentenced James to pay $12 million in reparations. The forensic accountants discovered that he had accumulated more than $20 million from corporate espionage and consulting, all of which have been confiscated. In the future, I have turned down every attempt at reconciliation from my relatives. The years lost are irreparable, and the damage is too great. I'm concentrating on assisting in the construction of safeguards to stop similar exploitation from happening to others. James's law is now being considered by a number of state legislatures to strengthen the penalty for planned family destruction. I keep my anonymity intact, even though the story has garnered international attention. Rather, I'm developing tools to identify patterns of systematic familial manipulation in collaboration with cybersecurity professionals. Leading the technical development, Ashley is transforming our misery into something that could potentially benefit others. My last update will be this one. Although justice has been done, some wounds never completely go away. I'm going about my life with the intention of keeping others from going through what James did to our family. I exposed my sister and fiancé's deception at the altar. The wedding they planned to destroy became their undoing. I operate a hotel at one of Boston's most prominent establishments as a 45-year-old woman. I've worked my way up from the front desk to my current position, dedicating the last 20 years of my life to this business. What began as a work to help my sister when our parents passed away has evolved into my identity, my accomplishment, and my haven in a cruel world. Creating moments, planning experiences, and making sure every visitor feels the warmth and elegance that have come to define our brand are all part of managing this hotel, not just keeping an eye on things or upholding standards. 3 years ago, we received our 5th star after I oversaw the restorations, rebrandings, and even a total reworking of the service philosophy. The employees here are like family to me. Many have been with me for more than 10 years, and they have seen me grow from a young, anxious boss to someone they respect and trust. They have helped me through the difficulties of raising my 35-year-old sister Rachel, filling in when she needed me at school functions or during those trying adolescent years when she found it hard to handle our parents' absence. Although Rachel currently works at a nearby cafe, our relationship has always gone beyond sisterhood. I was 25 years old, just starting my management training program, and suddenly in charge of a 15-year-old who had lost everything when our parents perished in that horrible tragedy. I became her best friend, mother, and sister all at once. Her welfare was my top priority in every choice I made and every promotion I sought. Our haven was the hotel. Rachel would complete her homework in my office during school breaks while conversing with the housekeeping staff and picking up French from our seasoned concierge. As she became older, she would assist at the front desk at peak times, and our frequent visitors loved her for her inherent charm. Despite the difficulties of those years, we managed to put a life together out of the pieces of our broken family. I was never interested in romance. Dating felt like an extra hassle between running the hotel and making sure Rachel had everything she needed. There were fleeting flirtations at industry gatherings and sporadic dinners with business associates, but nothing that ever seemed worth pursuing. My employees would make jokes about putting me up, but I consistently refused. I would tell them that Rachel was my child and the hotel was my husband. When 43-year-old Ethan arrived at our hotel 3 months ago, everything changed. The way he viewed everything made him stand out right away, not only because of his custom-made suit or his quiet assurance. The majority of our affluent guests were too preoccupied with their phones or their own significance to pay much attention to their surroundings. Ethan watched. He praised the delicate lighting that took me months to perfect, remarked on the vintage molding we kept throughout restorations, and pointed out the fresh flowers in the foyer. During check-in, he said, "Your attention to detail is extraordinary," his eyes looking directly into my eyes. Even though I've stayed in hotels all over the world, this one is unique. You can sense the thought that goes into each detail. Those remarks struck a chord with me because they recognized the hotel's thoughtfulness and effort in addition to its beauty. When he inquired about nearby eateries, I found myself offering not only the customary suggestions but also my own personal picks. The undiscovered treasures I came upon on late-night strolls following especially trying days. We fell into what seemed to be a natural pattern throughout his 3-night visit. After his meetings, he would come back to the lobby lounge every evening, where he was in an ideal position to strike up a discussion with me whenever I walked by. He inquired intelligently about my professional background, the hotel's past, and my future goals. Ethan appeared truly interested in every detail. In contrast to most visitors who view such discussions as merely being polite. Instead of doing the customary corporate checkout on his last morning, he left a handwritten message that read, "Your enthusiasm for the place is inspiring. How about we carry on our conversation over dinner?" He gave me his personal phone and said he understood if I wanted to keep connections professional. There's so much more I'd love to learn. I debated whether or not to text him for hours. When Rachel came into my office that afternoon, she saw that I was preoccupied and demanded to see the message. "You have to call him." More excited than I had seen her in years, she exclaimed. "When was the last time someone actually took the time to get to know you, not just your job?" Everything changed after that first dinner. Similar to my enthusiasm for hospitality, Ethan talked passionately about his work in investment banking. Just as I saw the delicate dance of managing a premium hotel, he explained complicated financial tactics in a way that made them sound like art. He listened to my mention of my parents with sincere compassion, offering his own stories of resiliency and loss. Months passed, and our bond grew faster than I should have been concerned, but Ethan made it all seem normal, even inevitable. Always keeping in mind the preferences of my employees, he would surprise me with lunch at work. He demonstrated an amazing recall of every small detail I had shared about Rachel on our weekend excursions, even swinging by to provide encouragement and inquire about her job at the cafe. He informed me, "You're different," one evening as we were strolling around the waterfront. "By now, most people in your situation would be burned out and jaded from dedicating so much of themselves to their families and jobs. However, you've managed to strike a lovely mix between professionalism and sincere friendliness. Finding someone who genuinely appreciates the importance of creating experiences for others is uncommon." 2 months into our relationship, over a private dinner at a fancy restaurant with a view of the harbor, the proposal was made. The ring was exactly what I would have picked for myself, elegant without being garish. As he knelt next to our table, Ethan talked about creating a future together while a string quartet played sweetly in the background. "When you find someone who shares your beliefs and commitment to greatness, why wait? I know this seems fast," he acknowledged. "Allow me to be a part of your universe and assist you in building something even more remarkable than what you have already accomplished." When Rachel learned that she was engaged, her reaction was intense. Tears were running down her cheeks as she gave me a hard hug. "At last," she said. "Someone deserving of you." I was genuinely moved by her excitement as she immersed herself into the wedding planning. We stayed up late talking about specifics and exchanging aspirations and wishes for the future, as if we were teenagers once more. The wedding preparations moved swiftly forward. I deserved to be the focus of attention for once in my life, so Ethan insisted on throwing a lavish celebration. He was comforting when I raised concerns about the expenses. His suggestion was to combine our resources. I saved for our honeymoon and future house, you saved for the wedding. I take it that we are now partners. Rachel insisted on handling a lot of the wedding planning so I could concentrate on managing the business. She managed the guest list, set up samples, and communicated with vendors with a level of efficiency that made me think of myself. "You've taken care of everyone else for so long," she replied. "Let me handle this for you." The hushed phone conversations that ended abruptly when I walked in the door, the occasional glance between Ethan and Rachel during our family dinners, and the unexpected coincidences of them running into each other when I was preoccupied with work-related emergencies are some of the indications that I chose to ignore. Everything fell apart yesterday. When Ethan hurried off to what he claimed was an urgent client meeting, he left his phone behind and came to my office to discuss final wedding plans. The notifications lit up the screen as the cell phone continued to vibrate with incoming texts. I didn't intend to pry, but I noticed a preview of a message. "My darling, I can't wait until tomorrow. She won't be aware of what struck her." Rachel was the sender. I opened the phone with shaking hands. There was no password security. He never thought I would see it, I discovered later. My world was completely upended by what I discovered. They exchanged hundreds of mails dating back months before I had even met Ethan. In an early communication, Ethan had written, "She's perfect for our plan. Hotel manager, substantial savings, no real relationship experience, plus she trusts you completely." Rachel had even more heartbreaking answers. "She has always put a lot of effort into looking after me. She never established a personal life. This will be far too simple." Everything had been planned by them. It wasn't by accident that Ethan showed up to the motel. Rachel had told him everything about me. Even my favorite wines and my routine. Every chance meeting, every sincere discussion, had been meticulously orchestrated. But their affair was only one aspect of the truth. Ethan's career as an investment banker was unsuccessful. He used credit cards to purchase his luxury suits. His promises of an opulent future were false, and his tales of financial triumph were made up. I was his lifeline as he drowned in debt. Their true strategy was made clear by the messages: utilize my cash to have an extravagant wedding, then during the ceremony, shockingly disclose their affair. They would make fun of me in front of my friends, co-workers, and employees, and I would be left to bear the consequences. With what was left of my money, they would vanish. Something else caught my attention as I read through their exchanges. Notes from Ethan's legal wife, Catherine. She knew who he truly was, unlike me. Arguments concerning unpaid bills, unpaid child support, and his gambling debts filled their texts. Now as the light is rising, my workplace is covered with deep shadows. My hair and makeup crew will be here in a few hours. Rachel is meant to be present, acting as the maid of honor and a loyal sister. Another detail I discovered in their communications is that Ethan will likely be practicing his vows, which I now know were lifted from romantic films, in preparation for his role in this deception. The location, catering, and flowers for this wedding cost all of my life savings, which I have been saving for the past 20 years while raising Rachel, sending her to college, and helping her pursue her dream of owning her own cafe. However, a peculiar serenity has descended upon me as I sit here and watch the early morning light dance across the hotel lobby to which I have devoted my life. They believed they were taking advantage of me by betraying my love and confidence. They failed to remember that I wasn't naive to get to where I am now. I've managed one of Boston's most prominent hotels for 20 years, and over that time I've learned how to deal with crises, transform setbacks into opportunities, and, above all, play the long game. I have been on the phone for the past several hours, to my lawyer, who has been diligently documenting everything and preparing the required legal measures. To Catherine, who needs to know what her husband is plotting, and to the hotel security team, who have always been more than just employees to me. They are the family I selected, and they have already taken some action. Today, a very different kind of ceremony will take place in the exquisite ballroom, where I have planned many flawless weddings for other ladies. I will benefit from every detail they intend to use against me. Everything will go exactly as planned, just not in the way they had hoped. This includes the 300 visitors, the costly decor, and the meticulously scheduled timing. I get a little depressed when I see the bridal gown hanging in my workplace because of the dreams it symbolized. However, such fantasies were based on false information. And I've always valued harsh realities over lovely lies. In front of everyone I know and admire, Rachel and Ethan intended to make a scene that would stick in my memory. Their goal was to make my wedding day a grand event. I've worked my entire career planning flawless events, and this one won't be any different. Things won't go as planned for Ethan and Rachel tomorrow. They're going to have exactly what they wanted, a wedding to remember. After all, I've learned one important lesson in my 20 years of hotel management: although the client isn't always right, they always receive what they are entitled to. The city is now painted in tones of gold as the sun has fully risen. Time to get ready for the once-in-a-lifetime performance. They believed they were the show's directors, but they are going to find out who actually controls this establishment. In contrast to them, I never let my audience down. Update. This morning, Catherine showed up at my hotel office. She produced a stack of financial paperwork, including evidence of Ethan's debts, unpaid child support, and the loans he had taken out using their shared assets as security. She was a composed woman in her early 40s with a calm intensity that mirrored mine. She put the documents on my desk and added, "He's been doing this for years." Spread elaborate stories about his wealth, targeting successful women. But this is the first time he's worked with an accomplice. I mentioned Rachel's involvement, and her voice caught a little. The following hour was devoted to going over messages and contrasting timings. The holes in my discovery were filled by Catherine's record. Ethan had a recurring pattern of extravagant credit card purchases, seducing women, and then vanishing with their money. Rachel's involvement, which gave his scam more legitimacy, was the only thing that was different this time. After that, my lawyer showed up and went over everything we had collected. "This isn't just fraud," she clarified. She has already prepared emergency petitions to freeze accounts and stop any attempts to transfer funds, saying, "It's a conspiracy. And with the evidence of their planned public humiliation, we can add emotional distress to the charges." Both of them continued to send messages throughout the morning. Rachel texted to say that she was happy to pick up the flowers. Fake concern filled Ethan's voice as he called twice to discuss last-minute plans. Every interaction seemed like a new betrayal when I didn't respond, but I remained silent. A discreet briefing has been given to the hotel staff. The purpose of the security cameras is to record everything. Disguised as service personnel, police officers have been placed subtly throughout the hotel. They are awaiting my cue, prepared to take action as soon as the fraud evidence is made public. Catherine went into further detail about their marriage, including how Ethan would go missing for months at a time and then come back with long-winded justifications and vows to reform. For years, she has been accumulating evidence in anticipation of the ideal time to take action. It was like giving her the last puzzle piece she had been attempting to complete when I contacted her last night. The cosmetics artist set up in my own suite an hour ago. In an apparent attempt to coordinate with Ethan for their big performance, Rachel texted that she would be late. A lovely reminder of how quickly fantasies may be turned into a weapon is the bridal gown hanging, ready. When Ethan's parents first arrived, they had no idea what their son really was. The reporters I reached out to pretend to be wedding photographers, eager to capture every moment. Ethan will not be aware of Catherine's presence until the ideal time, as she will be seated in the front row. The required paperwork has been prepared by her lawyer for prompt action. The frequency of Rachel's messages is increasing, and there is a tinge of anxiety in them. "Are you all right?" she inquires. "You seem distant." If it weren't so terrible, the irony of her worry would be funny. This is the result of 20 years of sisterhood. Though not for the purpose they intended, the location is turning into the ideal stage. Instead, every detail they planned to embarrass me would double as the background for their publicity. When I look at my reflection in the office window, I see someone who has spent decades controlling chaos rather than a victim. They believed they were planning the ideal scam, but they would soon discover who is actually in charge of this operation. Update 1. Just now, the makeup artist completed her job. This isn't the bridal preparation I had envisioned, and every brushstroke serves as a reminder. My mirror displays expertly done makeup and flawless contouring. They expect me to be a blushing bride, and I look just that. When Rachel did show up, she rushed into the bridal room with an armful of flowers and that phony smile that I can now see clearly. She embraced me with what seemed like real warmth and said, "You look stunning. How long has she been this skilled at acting?" As I observed her in the glass, she started to fiddle with my veil and talk about last-minute things. As her eyes met mine in the mirror, she remarked, "It's unbelievable that my big sister is finally getting married. You deserve this happiness for everything you've done for me." If it weren't so tragic, her performance's bravado would be stunning. All morning, Ethan has been sending texts that are meticulously crafted to keep up his facade until the very end, such as, "Can't wait to see you, love," and "just a few more hours until forever begins." According to his most recent communication, his parents are excited to have me join their family. The hotel's huge ballroom has been renovated just as planned, with 300 chairs precisely placed, crystal chandeliers glittering, and white roses all over the place. Only a few members of my team are aware of what is actually going to happen, but they work quickly through the preparations. Ethan won't notice Catherine until it's too late because she is already positioned, sitting quietly in a corner. A few minutes earlier, her lawyer showed up with paperwork. The police officers who are pretending to be employees have verified their identities. Rachel never stops attempting to spend meaningful time with me. "Do you recall the time we spent planning your wedding as children?" As she adjusted my clothing, she inquired. She is correct in one regard: this will undoubtedly be more remembered than those childhood fantasies. This is even better than anything we imagined. I can see visitors coming in through the window of the suite, acquaintances I've known for decades, co-workers from the hotel business, and even some of my frequent visitors who have grown to be like family. They're all decked out in their best attire, anticipating a love celebration. Rather, they will witness a very other event. In the foyer, Ethan's parents are welcoming visitors, and his father is gushing over his son's prosperous investing business. Their world will soon fall apart just as thoroughly as mine did yesterday. The string quartet is getting ready and rehearsing in the wedding march, which will never come to its customary end. I just received confirmation from my lawyer that everything is set up. Legally, as soon as Ethan and Rachel take action, a series of unanticipated events will begin. Rachel continues to be the loyal sister by assisting me with my sneakers. She squeezed my hand and asked, "Are you nervous?" I forced a tiny grin, realizing how accurate she was about the gravity of what was about to happen. It's normal to be quiet before such a big moment. We have 30 minutes till the ceremony starts, according to the wedding coordinator's recent signal. Rachel excused herself to inquire about a few things, most likely to finalize plans with Ethan. Today, I'm by myself in the bridal suite, surrounded by the mementos of what ought to have been the most joyous day of my life. They'll discover in half an hour how justified their dread of my attention to detail was. Update 3. I started walking down the aisle as the wedding march got underway. Ethan played his role as the successful, attractive groom filled with emotion as he stood at the altar. The scenario briefly resembled the fairy tale conclusion they had intended to ruin. Rachel, still wearing her maid of honor outfit, came forward as I was halfway to the altar. She said, "I'm sorry, but I can't let this continue." Her voice echoing over the flawless acoustics of the ballroom. "Ethan and I are in love. I'm carrying his child." The audience's gasp was precisely what they had hoped for. Just as expected, Ethan's face changed from that of a stunned groom to that of a regretful lover. I recognized that they had practiced this moment. Their spectacular surprise had been meticulously arranged. Ethan said, walking over to me, "Grace, you've been nice to us, but Rachel and I—" My voice was clear and calm when I interrupted. I motioned toward the rear of the room, and the big screens that had been used for wedding pictures came to life. "Let me handle the announcements from here." The meticulous preparation, the premeditated deception, the jokes about my confidence, and their planned betrayal were all visible in magnified form. Catherine got up from her chair and walked slowly in the direction of the altar. Ethan's expression turned pale. She said, "Hello, darling." Her voice piercing the startled quiet. "Surprised to see your wife here?" There was another round of gasps when the word wife reverberated around the ballroom. The policemen who had been pretending to be employees took their places. With paperwork in hand, my attorney came forward. Financial information started to slide on the screens: the theft, the fraud, the complex strategy they had devised. "Ethan Thompson," declared the lead detective, "you are being held on charges of grand theft, fraud, and conspiracy. Miss Rachel Anderson, please remain where you are." Rachel's expression fell flat. The self-assured smile gave way to fear. She reached for me and pleaded, "Grace, please. You don't understand. He said that once we had your money, we'd be together." Finally expressing my rage, I said, "Once you had my money? You'd run away together, start a new life with the savings I earned while raising you." When Ethan attempted to flee, the hotel security guards were prepared. All the exits were closed. His father got up and demanded answers. He received copies of the evidence, his son's dishonest past and the list of deceived women, instead of replies. Ethan's assets were frozen and divorce papers were served to him by Catherine's lawyer. As the cops carried Ethan away in handcuffs, the visitors watched in stunned silence. Rachel stayed motionless, tears running down her cheeks. She muttered, "What's going to happen to me?" I said icily, "That depends on the district attorney." She was escorted out of the ballroom by 2 officers. The click of handcuffs marked the end of 20 years of sisterhood. My hotel personnel navigated the turmoil with efficiency, guiding guests to the reception area. Surrounded by the flowers and decorations intended for a completely other event, I found myself feeling oddly at ease as I stood in the empty ballroom afterwards. Even while the betrayal still hurt, it was somewhat satisfying to see their well-thought-out strategy fall apart. Catherine's case appeared strong, and Rachel was assisting the prosecution. There would be several courtrooms where justice will be served. A month has passed since the wedding that never happened, because both Ethan and Rachel decided to collaborate with prosecutors after realizing the strength of the evidence against them. The court case proceeded more quickly than anticipated. I was given $50,000 in damages from Ethan by the court, but getting it will be a completely different story. The judge's remarks regarding their plan's premeditation and the breach of family trust were especially severe. Ethan is currently facing criminal charges in 2 additional states, and Catherine's plea for retroactive child support was also successful. Throughout the proceedings, Rachel made multiple attempts to get in touch with me. "I know I can never make this right," she said in one message, "but please, you're the only family I have." I erased all of her messages without answering. The sister I thought I knew, the one I reared, never existed. According to my lawyer, Rachel may be able to avoid jail time by cooperating with the prosecution, but she will probably still be subject to probation and required reparation payments. She used to talk about wanting me to be an aunt someday, so the fact that she is still carrying Ethan's child feels like a cruel joke. Once more, although in a different way, the hotel has turned into my haven. I was really struck by the loyalty of my workers during the entire event. They have surrounded me with a protective circle, answering phones, rerouting intruders, and making sure I can concentrate on what I do best, managing this establishment. Quickly, word got out about the failed wedding and the arrests that followed in the hotel business. Unexpectedly, it has improved rather than harmed my reputation. "Takes real strength to handle that kind of betrayal with such dignity," said one of my frequent clients. In a long letter, Ethan's parents expressed their sadness and embarrassment. I turned down their offer to pay for the wedding. Money was never the point of this. It has to do with family and trust. I've already transformed the intended improvements for the honeymoon room into a brand new corporate conference space. I've kept in touch with Catherine, exchanging details on Ethan's current legal issues and offering support for one another's court challenges. She has turned into a surprising ally who genuinely recognizes the extent of his dishonesty. "We're both better off knowing the truth," she stated to me, "no matter how much it hurts. I still have the bridal gown hanging in my wardrobe. Something prevents me from making the final decision to donate it, even though I should probably. Perhaps it serves as a reminder of what I learned about my own strength rather than what I lost." The woman who purchased that outfit was incredibly naive in her trust. Now the owner, a woman, is aware of this. I've kept Rachel's old room ready for her over the years, and her belongings are still there. I finally packed everything into boxes yesterday and gave a storage firm a call. It will be held for 30 days. I forwarded the information to her via my attorney. Anything left over after that will be donated. The betrayal itself is no longer the most difficult aspect. It's recognizing how poisoned 20 years of recollections have become. Was Rachel constantly playing a part, waiting for the appropriate moment, or was every Christmas picture, milestone celebrated and late-night chat with her genuine? I've returned to my job, finding solace in the well-known routines of hotel management. I'm putting all of my energy into new initiatives and enhancements, and my staff has observed that I'm more focused than ever. I was invited to give a presentation on crisis management at a hotel management conference last week. I hardly recognized Rachel's handwriting when I looked at her signature on the settlement documents this morning. On the other hand, I hardly recognized her anymore. With a few pen strokes, 20 years of sisterhood came to an end. I have lost my anger. Simply fed up with bearing the consequences of what transpired. My true family, my employees and devoted customers, need me, and the hotel needs me. And I simply have to look after myself for the first time in 20 years. I occasionally find myself thinking about Rachel and the unborn kid she is carrying late at night in my office. I know I made the correct decision though, when I think back on the messages I saw, the premeditated betrayal, and the years of deceit. After burning, certain bridges ought to remain ashes. My wife divorced me, went on vacation with her affair partner, thinking she'd get my parents' trust fund, but instead, she got a lawsuit. Hello, I'm Aaron, a 30-meter person, and I'm just going to try to write everything down here. I've known my pals have been friends with me my entire life because they claim that I'm the trust fund baby. They always attempted to get close to me, assuming I would be sponsoring alcohol at parties and holding extravagant parties all over the world. But every time I proved to be nothing like that, they abandoned me. My parents do have a sizable trust fund for me, but I am aware of how hard they have worked to earn it. I am aware that money wasn't created overnight and that my father's business may be destroyed by a single error. I therefore put a lot of effort into building on what my father began every single day. But I came so close to making that one error recently. I didn't date anyone while I was in college, except for Ashley, my wife, the love of my life, and 28F. I'm not the kind to casually date or hook up with women. My goal was to date in order to get married. But I drew all the wrong kinds of company when word got out about my parents' wealth. You know, having money makes you popular and makes others want to live off of you. I did occasionally sponsor alcohol and lend money to some of my friends, but nothing extravagant. Nothing that one would anticipate from a trust fund baby. I think it's okay to do things in moderation. In fact, it's crucial because you have to be a member of society. I therefore made an effort to be liked by everyone, although I hardly ever trusted anyone. I met Ashley at my graduation celebration. I struck up a conversation with her informally as she didn't seem to know me. We hit it off right away. After exchanging phone numbers, I took her to McDonald's for our first date. We had an incredible time. I fell in love and she didn't seem to mind that our first date wasn't particularly spectacular. My first love in life was Ashley. She wasn't dull and didn't seem to be making a concerted effort to win my approval. She was just being herself. She was also incredibly intelligent. I seemed to obtain an image that was beyond my budget while I was with her, and I felt normal. She didn't seem surprised at all when I took her to meet my parents after we had been dating for a month. She seems to agree that I was wealthy and impartial. That gave me hope that she wasn't at all put off by my money. She probably wasn't surprised because that was part of her strategy from the beginning, but I didn't realize that at the time. Winning me over was a well-planned tactic because she was well aware of who I was and that I was not seeing anyone. When she met with my parents, she exuded elegance. I fell deeply in love with her because she was so charming. The first female I ever took home was her. My parents were ecstatic about me. She never took any expensive presents from me during the year we dated. The fact that we weren't yet married was the only explanation for her refusal. After a year, I asked her to marry me. She was my parents' ultimate sweetheart. Since she wanted to work to increase our wealth, she told my parents that she only had one request and that they never asked her to quit her job. My mother gave her a hug and expressed their happiness that I had found a wife who was so encouraging. Ashley earned a respectable salary while working for an IT company. My parents threw a party for our second anniversary. They declared their intention to offer Ashley a present and suggested adding her name as a beneficiary in addition to mine. They introduced Rob, the trustee, and Ashley to everyone else. He worked as an accountant for the business that managed the investments and money's legalities. Rob had a daughter and was married. His spouse practiced law at the same firm. My wife's name was listed as one of the beneficiaries, and everything was handled. Ashley had a great relationship with my parents and always tried her hardest to make them happy. As part of her career, she also traveled and worked a lot. Later on, I discovered that whenever my parents hosted a party, she would travel with her affair partner. She constantly wanted to go and looked beautiful. Numerous times during these parties, I witnessed her conversing with Rob in a corner while blushing from the wine she was holding and laughing a bit too much. And even though I was naive and infatuated, I never once considered the possibility that she might be having an affair with Rob. However, these two had been having an affair behind my back the entire time. In retrospect, Ashley surprised me. She is a true professional actor. The idea of ever suspecting her felt sacrilegious because of how beautifully she treated each of us. She was merely waiting though. My parents died within 6 months of one another, about 7 years into our marriage. It was simply too hard to manage all the emotions and still keep the business operating, so I threw myself fully into my profession. Ashley began revealing her actual self for the first time in years at that point. She remained aloof after the funeral. I attempted to give her space since I believed she might be coping with her grief in her own manner. She didn't inquire about my well-being or mention anything about the death of my parents. I found that odd, but I also subconsciously chastised myself for not being able to express my feelings. It took me about 2 weeks before I made the decision to leave work early and speak with Ashley about it. On the way back, I purchased a bunch of pink roses. Since I had my own key, I opened the door and confronted Rob. I asked him if he had come to discuss the trust or something since I was perplexed. Ashley emerged with 2 luggage from behind him. That's when I realized Rob had 2 suitcases too. "Oh dang," Ashley remarked, glancing at me. "I meant to do this quietly. I was going to leave you a note to inform you that I'm moving out, but I suppose we'll have to do it in person now. I'm leaving you, all right?" "Yes, you heard correctly. And yes, after we get back from our trip to Italy, I'll be moving in with Rob. Your parents ensured that I would receive sufficient funds to cover it. We're divorcing then. Rob will now file for divorce as well. Don't look like a helpless puppy now. Are those flowers for me?" "Thank you, I'll take them. Goodbye." Before I could ask her to wait, they had already left. There was silence after I heard the motor revving up. My wife of 8 years abruptly left me. Is the phrase, "the world crashing down in front of you," familiar to you? Well, that sums up my feelings the best. I didn't leave the house for 2 days. I kept the blinds closed. Cup noodles and chilled meals were my only sources of sustenance. I was afraid of the silence, so I never switched off the TV. I had no desire to take a bath. Someone rang the doorbell on the 3rd day. I assumed they would eventually go if I didn't answer the door, but that didn't happen. Whoever it was pressed the bell longer and harder each time it rang. The ringing continued for several minutes after that. Someone was now hammering on the door. "I know you're in there, open up right now," a woman's voice said. "I won't go until I have a little conversation with you." I assumed it was Ashley, but then I recalled that she and Rob were on vacation in Italy. I felt a new surge of melancholy at the concept. I dragged myself out of bed and began opening the door because the banging and knocking wouldn't stop. A woman with red hair wearing a 2-piece suit was waiting for me when I opened the door. It appeared as though she would eat my head off. "Your wife fled with my husband," she remarked. "It won't assist anyone to sit here and be a wimp. In 15 minutes, get up, take a bath, and enter the living room. We have a lot to discuss." As soon as I didn't answer, she opened the door, met my eyes and said, "You stink." "Okay, Mom," I said before I went to the restroom. "I heard that," she yelled back. I laughed in spite of themselves. After my bath, I felt somewhat human again, and the living room looked immaculate when I got back. The kitchen was no exception. Rob's wife, Sandra, gave her introduction. She explained that she had been attempting to contact me at my workplace for the past 2 days but was unable to do so, so she ultimately made the decision to come to my house. She was serious. What she was telling me was unbelievable. Sandra claimed that, similar to me, she was unaware that Rob was unfaithful to her. Only 2 days ago, when he left the house and promised to send his assistant to get the rest of his belongings, did she find out. Her world was broken, just like mine was, but she didn't mope about it. She began to dig. She started by looking through Rob's laptop. There, he kept his work belongings, but he was hooked onto Facebook. She quickly combed through his conversations to discover who he was having an affair with. She swooped like a hawk once she was certain. She was very certain that Rob was withdrawing funds for his personal purposes after reviewing all of the documents pertaining to my trust fund. He was being helped by one of the beneficiaries, who was none other than Ashley, so it began little enough to go unnoticed, but ultimately he had grown confident and reckless. Although she wasn't lying, I kind of wanted she was. Sandra was prepared to destroy them because she had all the evidence. Sandra said, "I have a little daughter," while I was still unsure. "I'll get every last dime out of Rob, and I'll completely destroy Ashley. What you believe doesn't matter to me. I only wanted to let you know. If you do not wish to participate, you're under no obligation to do so." She exuded confidence and determination, and I knew from a way that I could trust her. I was on board then. We exchanged handshakes. We were working on a scheme that would cost my ex-wife a lot of money while she was on vacation in Italy. Rob and Ashley had returned from their 10-day vacation in Italy. Sandra and I wanted to see how they would react when the penny dropped, so we waited for their call. I had been at work on a Monday when Ashley called. She went on a tirade as soon as I answered. What on earth is going on? What does Rob mean when he says we're having problems? Where's my money too? You mean the money from my parents that Rob used to buy you presents and most likely the apartment you moved into, I said. I hope my lawyer got back to you. It's Rob's wife Sandra, who also happens to be employed at the company. Before she could utter another thing, I hung up and told her I had to leave. That day, Ashley was waiting outside when I left work. She blocked my path as I proceeded toward my car, pretending not to notice her. I had known her for a long time, but I had never seen her so upset by anything. She requested me to explain things to her since she seemed to be having trouble understanding Rob's nervous account of what happened and wanted to hear it from me in simple terms. I informed her that I had learned about the divorce petition from her attorney. The only difference was that she would not receive a single dime. The expression on her face, oh boy. She never would have imagined that this would be taking place. I saw the panic rising within her. After experiencing a moment of cruel pleasure, I felt a great deal of guilt for placing her in this predicament. It's hard to see someone you care about suffer, and I still loved her. I had to leave as soon as possible to avoid being manipulated by her. I brushed her aside and headed for my car. From behind me I heard her yelling. She was requesting that I stop. How could you do this to me? Was the final thing I heard before getting into the car. I wanted to lash out and tell her that I could ask her the same stupid question because I felt like I was being stabbed. Instead though, I got into my car and left. In my rear view mirror, I could see her, completely confused, taking care of the automobile. Rob, meantime, had received notification that he would be leaving the organization. He was damaging the company's reputation, and it seems that word had gotten out. Since many customers had contacted to request contract termination, firing Rob was the greatest damage control measure the company could take. Sandra arranged for the best counsel because she had several friends who were lawyers. She was confident that she would win the lawsuit and be granted custody. As I drove home, Sandra was providing me with all of these information. I felt a lot lighter. I wrote this up after returning home. I wanted to let out my frustration after my encounter with Ashley. Is Ashley being treated too harshly, in your opinion? Update 1. Hello to everybody. I have an update now. A week has passed. I appreciate you helping me and getting me back up when I was feeling quite lost. I showed him this Reddit article during our first therapy appointment. It's a good coping mechanism, he said. According to him, it's normal to mourn the person you lost, in this case, Ashley, so it makes sense that I would feel extremely overwhelmed once I revealed the truth. I'll try to give you all a summary of what transpired this week. Ashley gave me another call. Her voice was softer this time. She spoke in a muffled voice, as if she had been sobbing. I was asked if I had eaten dinner. Do you want me to come over and cook it for you? She said after I declined. I was surprised. She stated she would be at my house in 30 minutes, so I assumed she interpreted my silence as a yes. No, you won't, I responded, finally finding my voice. Are you serious? You want to come here, make me supper and set up a playhouse after what you did? No, darling, she said. We can talk, even though I know things haven't been well. At the time, I was going crazy. At this moment, I believe I yelled, bad? Do you think what you did was bad? Simply awful? It was evil. It was self-centered and cruel. You're going to hell with it. I would never again want to see your face. What the devil is wrong with you? I felt like throwing up at the next thing she uttered. I should stop overreacting, she said. For me, I believe it marked a turning point. At this time, I saw her true self, a woman who didn't regret her acts at all and would do it all over again in a heartbeat, despite the remorse I had been feeling for hurting her. The call was a trap, an attempt to control me. She was unaware of my realization and continued to complain about how I was portraying her in the lawsuit as a gold digger, even though she was actually making money and had a job. I wanted to let her know that I had paid off all of her student loans, so if she was now living nicely, it was thanks to my family and me. She claimed that the only reason she wanted to visit was because she believed we should have a conversation and reconcile, and that I should drop my case since it was useless. It was impossible for me to refrain from asking, what about Rob? She claimed that Rob was simply different and that she was having an affair with him because he made her boring existence interesting. She then began accusing me of never being there for her and of being away on business. She claimed that she had a passionate romance with Rob, whereas I lacked it greatly. I was suing her rather than offering her an apology. By this time, I was certain she was attempting to bleed my ear. She could have discussed it with me or we could have attended marriage counseling, I informed her, if she had been experiencing so many issues. The answer was never cheating. She started to insist on coming over and change the subject. After hanging up, I dialed Sandra. I explained what had transpired to her. Sandra requested that I call her back and invite her over. I will also come over, she responded. She requested me to comply in order to find out her true intentions. I ended my conversation with Sandra and dialed Ashley instead. When she picked up, she sounded so arrogant. She claimed she will be there in 30 minutes and that she knew I would come around. Sandra arrived before Ashley did. There was not enough time for her to explain her plan, and I was unaware of it. She wanted me to make Ashley sit in the dining room after she went inside. Sandra stated that she would appear in this play in a special capacity. About 40 minutes later, Ashley arrived, and it was clear that she had tried to appear presentable. She did look nice. She entered, gave me a kiss and started to go to the bedroom where Sandra was. I halted her and requested that she take a seat in the dining room. "But why, sweetheart?" She pouted as she turned to face me. "Was it easy for me to forfeit my rights? Was your affection so feeble? Baby, will you not stand up for us?" It was then that Sandra emerged from the bedroom. Ashley muttered something along the lines of, "What the hell?" as she appeared too astonished to talk. "Ah, finally, we meet the woman who is dating my useless husband Rob the cheater," Sandra stated with a smirk to Ashley. "You did indeed forfeit your right to the bedroom, I see." Ashley turned to face me and said, "How could you so simply replace me? After stealing all of my joy, you're having an affair with Rob's wife. We owe a lot of money, and now we won't even receive the money from the trust fund. Rob is currently unemployed, and it's unclear who released the information. I could also lose my job. You're incredibly self-centered." "What do you mean we have debts?" Sandra interrupted. "Is it comparable to a joint loan? Are you withdrawing the money and assisting Rob and Miss BL or what?" Ashley swung her around. "Then absolutely, I was. Rob has had my support from the beginning. Do you believe he could have organized such a thing himself? Of course I aided him. Not like you, wicked witch. You have treated him in a condescending manner. He chose me over you for that reason. Leave this place. When your husband is unemployed, how are you able to be here? Why in the world don't you support him and make a statement in his favor?" After giving me a charming smile, Sandra informed me that she believed I should send Ashley home. The task was completed. After receiving the signal, I held the door open for Ashley. Ashley hurled a barrage of insults at us as she walked out. What just happened?" I asked Sandra as she was leaving. Sandra winked at me after pressing stop on a tape. "We got a confession, Aaron," she exclaimed with excitement, her eyes gleaming. "We'll destroy them." She heard me say, "I'm not letting both of them escape. That's Sandra for you, my friends. She is cruel and cunning. I would be afraid of her if I were Rob and Ashley. She simply performs her job too well." Sandra admitted before leaving that she was the one who had clearly leaked the Rob news. I informed her that I was picking up on her intelligence and that I had at least deduced that she was involved. "I'll keep you guys informed." At last, the game is starting. Update 2. I'm back with an update, which I think is a bit early, but I couldn't wait to share it with you all. Sandra is an incredibly vicious murderer. She explained everything in detail and submitted the recording to Ashley's employer. In the note, she stated that someone who would go to such efforts to deceive her loved ones wasn't a trustworthy employee and would likely attempt to steal money from them if she saw a chance. Sandra also had a long-standing friendship with one of Ashley's business colleagues. Sandra's buddy quickly withdrew from a transaction she was about to support, claiming that she had doubts about the reliability of several team members. The agreement was therefore off the table. When Ashley's supervisor heard the news, he was completely distraught. To salvage the deal, they acted quickly and dismissed the offending individual. That's all. My ex-wife was abruptly let go from the corporation. Both of them are currently unemployed and in debt. Sandra informed me that she had been receiving constant calls from Rob. He began messaging her when she didn't answer. She disabled his number and urged him to stop bothering her. "I'm having a great time right now. According to my therapist, who I've been seeing, Ashley ought to serve as a case study on narcissism." That was kind of amusing, lol. After a long time, I burst out laughing. In any case, I'll update you all. Oh, did I mention that Rob had been arrested? Ashley apparently had to take money out of her savings account to cover his bail. Serve them well, lol. For now, goodbye. Update 3. Sandra gave me a call this morning. She was enraged. Rob apparently rang her doorbell intoxicatedly early in the morning and continued to abuse her. The entire incident was captured on her security camera. He tried breaking in when Sandra begged him to leave. Only after Sandra threatened to call the police did he go. The worst part of the entire situation was that Sandra and Rob's daughter, Emily, woke up as a result of all the noise. She witnessed the events and is now traumatized. Children typically suffer after divorce, but witnessing your father go drunk on your doorstep, yelling at your mother, and attempting to break into the house is an entirely different matter. Since then, Emily has refused to leave her room. Sandra needed to go to the police station to file a restraining order, so she asked if I could come over. At such short notice, she was unable to hire a babysitter. I assured her I didn't mind and asked them to call me at work if they needed anything. Sandra went out the door as soon as I arrived. Since Emily hadn't even had breakfast, she advised me to offer her some food if she came out. I went to knock on Emily's room as soon as Sandra left. I got a pin and shattered the lock when no one answered. I have no idea why, but I was feeling suspicious. I was contemplating the worst-case situations during the stillness. I was unable to remain motionless while the youngster was in pain. There was no one in the room when I rushed in, and I was breathing heavily. Then I noticed a slight movement. Emily was concealed beneath the bed. With the exception of her hair, the 3 or 4-year-old daughter looked exactly like her mother and was staring at me with fear in her eyes. She stammered in terror and managed to ask me if Rob had sent me and if I was her dad's buddy. I got down on my knees and said hello. I explained to her that I was actually her mom's friend rather than her father. At that, she appeared to calm down a little. She then began to stare out the window nervously and inquired as to whether her father had left. Since her mother was like a tigress and would do everything in her power to protect her cub, I answered that he was. At that point, she broke down in tears and confided in me about her fear that Rob would break in and harm her mother. I promised her I would never allow that to occur. In addition to losing a parent, this innocent child had witnessed what a terrible monster her father was, and I felt terrible for her. I persuaded her to play her favorite Disney film and come out. I served her some lasagna that I had warmed up. Sandra tells me that Emily was sleeping well on my chest and drooling into her favorite pillow when she returned. Emily clung to my legs and wouldn't let me go that evening when I was ready to go. She sobbed repeatedly before finally admitting that she was afraid Rob would reappear and leave her mother alone. When Sandra rolled her eyes at me, I stopped joking that her mother didn't need to be protected. I stayed the night because I knew it would be very hard to explain a restraining order to a youngster. Emily and I both slept soundly. Sandra served us delicious pancakes the following morning, and I left right away for work. That night, Emily made me swear that I would return to sleep at their place. Well, I suppose that's my life at the moment. Sandra's place is where I have to stay at night. Sandra has yet to find a good child psychologist, despite her best efforts. I'll give you all an update following the initial hearing. Goodbye. Update 4. Well, phew, I guess I haven't given you guys any updates in a while. The initial hearing has concluded. This is what a lay person like me has discovered. Rob and Ashley are completely cooked. Yes, brother, I do mean it. They're barbecue cooked. We have so much damning evidence against them that the matter is really closed. However, given the nature of courts, it is likely to take a long time. Sandra thinks it won't take more than 6 months. She also thinks that they will both be going to jail. Rob and Ashley will definitely not receive any compensation for the divorce. Rob is also required to pay child support. Rob and Ashley were unsuccessful in their employment search. I've learned that Rob works as a janitor at a local club. We witnessed Rob being assaulted by some loan sharks outside the court. For that man, things are looking bleak. He's done. He rushed to Sandra when he saw her outside the court and collapsed at her feet. We now know better, yet he persisted in pleading with her to take him back. According to Sandra's attorney, Rob won't even be granted visitation rights because the case is so strongly in Sandra's favor. I discovered my fiancé and my sister in bed together during my engagement party, and my parents asked me to stay silent to protect her reputation. I am a tenured professor at a large northeastern university, 42F. Since I'm still processing what happened at my wedding and, to be honest, I need some perspective, I need to explain what happened. Let me first briefly explain the dynamics of my family. Lisa, 38F, my younger sister, has always been our parents' favorite. Lisa entered the media industry and became a local TV personality, while I spent years conducting research and writing articles for academic purposes. Our parents were always telling me how successful and gregarious Lisa was. The partiality was brutally evident when I was growing up. Our parents paid top bucks for Lisa to enroll in theatrical classes. I was told to use what we had when I required equipment for my science projects. All our lives, this trend persisted. The only person who really encouraged me to pursue my academic goals was my dad's mother, my grandma Martha. Elena, you have a gift in your mind, she would often tell me. Don't allow someone to make you less bright. While my parents were occupied watching one of Lisa's TV segments, she joined me in celebrating the publication of my first research paper in a famous magazine. After putting a lot of effort into my job, I became one of the youngest female professors in my field. Even though it wasn't the life my parents had in mind, I created a life of which I was proud. Then, during an academic meeting, I met David, 44M. He was pleasant, intelligent, and seemed to have a unique understanding of me. After 2 years of dating, I was ecstatic when David proposed. How did my folks respond? Well, at least you won't be alone with your books anymore. Even more telling was Lisa's response. With the same patronizing grin she had had since she was a young girl, she exclaimed, "At last. I was concerned that you wouldn't meet someone who could cope with your intensity." The celebration of my engagement took place at my parents' home. Lisa insisted on assisting with the arrangements, but her idea of assistance mainly consisted of offering suggestions that were more in line with her preferences and criticizing my selections. She began to visit our home regularly, particularly during my work hours. I assumed she was simply acting in her typical domineering manner. In retrospect, there were a lot of warning signs that I decided to overlook. The way Lisa would enter a room and David's gaze would follow her. How she would laugh at his jokes and touch his arm. Lisa started coming to our neighborhood at the same time that David was spending more and more late nights at the lab. I recall the final instance of normalcy before things went awry. I was standing in the bedroom from my early years, examining old pictures hanging on the wall. Several glitzy photos of Lisa were hidden below my graduation photo. It seemed appropriate, a fitting illustration of my role inside the family. However, what followed? Things took an unexpected turn at that point. Downstairs, the engagement celebration was in full force, and I became aware that I hadn't seen David in a while. I told myself he was probably just making a work call, so I went upstairs to look for him. I heard noises coming from my former bedroom at that moment. My hand was motionless on the doorknob while I stood there for a while. I opened the door even though I had a sneaking suspicion of what I would discover. David and Lisa were entangled on the bed where I grew up. I had spent many evenings studying for my PhD qualifications in the same bed. Lisa lacked even the grace to display embarrassment. "Oh, Elena, you should have known," she continued with that same condescending grin. I always manage to achieve what I desire. The worst thing. Richard, 40M, a prosperous real estate developer, was Lisa's husband. While his wife ruined my engagement, he was gone on business, most likely closing another $1 million deal. I can't really recall what transpired next. In some way, my legs carried me down the hallway as I backed out of the room. David's voice carried that false sincerity I now knew all too well as he called after me, "Elena, hold on. It isn't what you believe." However, it was precisely what I had assumed. Before my parents caught me, I had already gone halfway down the steps. My expression must have told them everything. "Elena, sweetie, please don't make a scene," was my mother's initial statement. "Consider your sister's union. The marriage of my sister. Not the broken engagement I had. My heart isn't broken. The marriage of my sister." With a low, anxious voice, Dad joined in. "You are aware of Richard's fidelity issues. A prenuptial agreement exists. She might lose everything. Elena, please consider the impact this would have on the family." The family. The same family that had prioritized Lisa's needs at all times. The same family that had disregarded my accomplishments, disparaged my decisions, and now demanded that I shield their golden kid from the repercussions of her own behavior. I passed them and entered the crowded gathering. When I walked in, the room fell silent. They must have noticed something in my face. David came up the stairs, buttoning his shirt hurriedly. Her flawless makeup was a little smudged a few moments later. My voice was unusually steady as I continued. "I apologize, but the engagement is off. I have to go, but please enjoy the food and beverages." Whispers and gasps began instantly. Behind me, I could hear my mother's shoes clicking quickly on the floor, but I continued. I went outside to my car after grabbing my keys. David was beckoning me, demanding an opportunity to clarify. Mom was crying for commitment to the family. Lisa watched from the doorway with the same angry smile, strangely mute. I packed up everything that belonged to David, including his priceless collection of rare scientific papers, books, and clothes, and drove directly home. Everything was placed in boxes. After renting a storage container and dropping off his items, I sent him the address and code to get entry. I then blocked all of his social media accounts, his email, and his phone number. My relatives began sending me messages right away, including guilt trips about how this would ruin Lisa's marriage, pleas to stay quiet about what had happened, and cautions about family loyalty. I also blocked their numbers. I came to a realization that evening while I was sitting by myself in my partially vacant flat. This was more than merely David's treachery. This was the result of my family always picking Lisa over me. I had finally had enough of them choosing her happiness above mine. I inhaled deeply, made a glass of wine for myself, and started methodically clearing out their contact details from my phone. Every time I deleted something, I felt lighter. I was choosing myself for the first time in my life. I put myself into my work after that night. My haven was the university. I worked in the lab for several hours as my research team worked on a molecular biology breakthrough project. Despite noticing my alteration, my co-workers were gracious enough to keep their distance. Richard, the husband of Lisa, arrived at my workplace 3 weeks following the engagement celebration. His normally spotless suit was a little rumpled, and he appeared exhausted. Simply put, "I need to know everything," he said. I was honest with him. He grabbed the armrest of his chair and listened in quiet, his knuckles white. After I was done, he got up, fixed his tie and remarked, "I appreciate your candor. You have at least one family member who respects the truth." Then he went away. My parents' efforts to get in touch with me grew more urgent. Voicemails about mending the family were left by Mom. Dad emailed about forgiving others and moving on. It was surprised that Lisa remained completely silent on the radio. My grandma later told me that Richard was divorcing them and had left their home. My pillar of support throughout this period was my grandmother Martha. She would sit with me, share stories about her personal challenges, and bring home-cooked meals. It was her opinion that the family you choose is more important than the family you're born into. I was resolved to turn my suffering into something useful. So I concentrated on drafting my next research article. One of the best journals in my profession approved the work. A professor at another university sent me a congrats email the day it was published. Michael, 45M, was his name, and he was an expert in research facility architecture. Michael's email was kind but professional. He remarked that he had read my earlier work and that our departments might work together. I was drawn to his writing style because it demonstrated more than simply professional etiquette. There was a sincere interest in the science. We started a communication regarding the relationship between research efficiency and laboratory design once I replied. Over time, our emails grew longer and more intimate. He talked about how his own family had helped him pursue his unusual career path of integrating scientific study with building. I really ran into him one day when I was buying coffee at the school cafe. I spilt my coffee all over his white shirt while he was at our university for a conference. As I assisted him in cleaning up, Michael grinned and commented, "Well, this is quite different from our email conversations," rather than being upset. He asked if he could get me a coffee substitute. I paused. I had vowed to never date again after David, especially in academic settings. However, Michael was different in some way. Perhaps it was the way his eyelids wrinkled when he grinned or the fact that he made no effort to impress me with his academic background. Observing my hesitancy, he laughed, "I promise I'm not a serial killer. Just a clumsy architect who'd like to replace your coffee and maybe hear more about your latest research in person." "Just coffee," I firmly stated. For the first time in months, I felt at ease as we sat and chatted. David was not like Michael at all. When I told him about my work, he listened. Really listened. With refreshing candor, he told tales of his own endeavors, triumphs and setbacks. He asked if he might see me again before heading out to his next conference session. To my astonishment, I said yes. I sat in my office that night and gazed out over the campus. I felt hope, something I hadn't felt in a long time, when the quad was covered in long shadows from the sinking sun. Not only for a possible romance, but also for the chance to create a life that was really mine, free from Lisa's persistent influence and my family's expectations. My mother texted me, "Lisa is having a hard time." And my phone chimed. "Richard is acting irrationally. She requires her sister." I took a good look at the mail before deleting it without replying. After being torched, certain bridges ought to remain burned. Rather, I opened my email and started composing a letter to Michael regarding a joint study project I was considering. I grinned as I typed, recalling how his eyes had brightened when we talked about the possibilities of multidisciplinary study. Perhaps, just possibly, this was the start of something genuine. Something that was exclusively mine, unaffected by the poisonous relationships of my past. Update 1. 6 months have passed since my previous post. Regarding Michael, the architect I actually ran into at the campus cafe, many of you requested an update. That coffee date ended up into something I never would have imagined. Following our first meeting, we began discussing our joint study project over video calls. Over time, these business-related conversations turned into lengthy discussions on anything from childhood dreams to beloved books. Michael found my passion for academics fascinating. In contrast to my family, who always considered it as a weakness. There was no plan for our first actual date. We met to go over the specifics of the project while he was in town for another conference. We both were aware that we were hungry as the meeting was running late. We eventually found ourselves in a small Italian eatery close to campus, where we chatted and shared a plate of pasta until the waiters began stacking seats. I was particularly struck by how different he seemed from David. Michael did more than just skim my most recent research publication when I mentioned it. He read it carefully and returned with insightful questions. With refreshing candor, he discussed his own professional struggles, such as a recent project that had over its budget. When he inquired about my family, it was the true test. His genuine desire prompted me to open up, despite my initial reluctance. I filled him in on everything, including Lisa, my parents' partiality, and yes, the disastrous engagement party. He just listened, without the customary uncomfortable answers or attempts to protect familial relationships. He then showed me that he really understood by sharing his own experience with a competitive brother. Although our joint endeavor is progressing nicely, we have taken care to keep our personal and professional relationships apart. We mostly see each other on the weekends because his department is in a different state. In fact, the distance has been beneficial since it has allowed us to naturally build trust. He asked me to meet his family last weekend. Considering my past, I was afraid, but it was not what I had anticipated. I was welcomed right once by his mother, Linda, who shared stories about Michael's early architectural efforts and showed me his awkward childhood photos. It seems that he once attempted to use his father's power tools to rebuild their garage. "We've heard about your research work," Linda said, pulling me aside, which was the most bizarre moment. "Michael is constantly praising your brilliance." It was expressed with sincere pride and interest rather than comparison or jealousy. I neglected to add that I recently received an offer at work that would allow me to work closer to Michael's university. It's a prominent position that would greatly boost my career. His initial reaction when I informed him about it was, "That's incredible. Describe the research opportunities in detail." I was ecstatic with my accomplishment and said nothing about what it meant for us. I still haven't agreed to the job. I'm hesitant to make significant life adjustments for a romance after everything that happened with my family and David. However, knowing that Michael would be there for me no matter what, I feel for the first time that I can base this choice on what's best for my career. Last week, my grandmother Martha met him and approved of him. "Simply, he sees you," she said. "Not who he wants you to be, but who you are." It has been quiet to be honest, and I haven't heard from Lisa or my parents in months. Healing sometimes entails letting go of those who don't value you, even if they are family. Update 2. My last update regarding Michael was 3 months ago. I want to share this with the group who helped me get through my worst moments since a lot has transpired. I agreed to work at the university close to Michael's. The change was welcomed by my research team, and we have established a method for remote communication. The main reason the transfer has gone smoothly is that I took my time and properly planned everything. Last weekend the most significant change occurred. I was in Michael's kitchen preparing dinner with him. Instead of the butter I expected, he was holding a little box when he turned back to retrieve something from the refrigerator. He didn't get down on one knee or give a long speech. "You know how we've been talking about combining lab design with research efficiency," he added instead. "Well, I've also been considering merging our lives. What are your thoughts?" The ring was very different from the gaudy one David had given me. It was exquisite and simple. Michael's following statement, "I know your work is important to you," truly touched me. A matching desk lamp is included with the ring for use during late-night research sessions. "Yes," I said, simultaneously crying and laughing. We are invited to an engagement celebration by Michael's parents. Regarding it, Linda has been really kind, often asking if I'm okay with the plans. Michael immediately offered that we forgo the party entirely when I hesitated. However, we're having a small gathering. Just close friends and family, because I don't want my past to control my future. Richard, the ex-husband of my former sister, sent me an unexpected email. He said he's doing well with his new companion and praised me. He appears content now that the divorce is official. Hearing from him was strangely therapeutic. Martha, my grandmother, is overjoyed. She gave me a hug and muttered, "This one's a keeper," after I showed her the ring. She is correct. The small things, like how he turned one of his spare rooms into a makeshift home office for me with a whiteboard for research notes, are what show how much Michael cares. Somehow, most likely through extended family, my parents learned about the engagement. Mom left a voicemail stating that they would like to participate in the celebration and make amends. I have not answered. It's preferable to keep some doors closed. Update 3. My engagement update was 2 months ago, and I wish I could report that everything has gone well since then. I must convey the unexpected turn the wedding preparations have taken. At the lakefront home of Michael's family, we were organizing a small ceremony. Linda has been fantastic. She has always respected our wishes while assisting with arrangements. Only family members, close friends and coworkers who truly support us were on the carefully picked guest list. Then I got an email yesterday that really chilled me. According to what my mother wrote, she and Dad decided to invite Lisa to the wedding. Their logic? She's your only sister, and family should be together on special days. I called Michael right away. Whatever you want to do, I'm with you, he answered before I could even articulate my panic. We have the day, not them. I was able to think clearly thanks to his cool backing. When I told my grandmother Martha, she became enraged. After everything they've done, she said, they have no right. I knew I had to deal with this on my own, but she offered to run interference. Before sending it, I wrote and revised my response multiple times. Mom and Dad, I made it very plain that I didn't want Lisa to attend my wedding. This cannot be discussed. You won't be accepted either if you're unable to respect this barrier. Elena. Their reaction was expected. About family togetherness, Mom called in tears. Dad wrote a long email about forgiving others and letting go. They even had some family members contact them on their behalf. Michael has had tremendous support from his parents during this time. Linda called to reassure me that only those invited would be allowed entry to the location due to security measures. Michael's brother James volunteered to deal with any unwelcome visitors directly. My research team's support was the most unexpected. They offered to surround me with a protective circle during the wedding after I brought up the matter in a lab meeting, looking agitated. My department director, Dr. Anderson, even offered to accompany me on my wedding. Last night, Michael and I went over our wedding arrangements. If it made me feel safer, he proposed that we alter the location, the date, or even go on an elopement. However, I no longer wish to allow my family's behavior to dictate my decisions. Therefore, we're sticking to our original intentions while taking extra safety measures. Individual QR codes will be included in the invitations, security will be in place at the location, and most importantly, our chosen family and real friends will be present to support us. Last weekend, my grandmother assisted me in choosing my wedding gown. She said something that made me cry as I stood in front of the mirror. Dear, you're gleaming. Because you're at last free to be who you are, not because of the outfit. Though I'm more resilient than I was previously, I'm still anxious about what Lisa might try. There is more to our wedding than just Michael and I becoming husband and wife. It's about choosing genuine love over poisonous familial relationships, happiness over drama, and tranquility over upheaval. Update 4. It took place. Lisa appeared to my wedding wearing an outfit that looked to be meant to attract attention and was obviously pregnant, despite all of our safety procedures and security measures. She had somehow entered through a service entrance thanks to our parents. Linda hurried in with a pale face when I was in the wedding room. I'm very sorry, Elena, she was brought by them. Your mother made a fuss about not excluding an expectant woman when we attempted to stop them. She didn't have to complete. My parents had already put Lisa in the front row, but Michael sent his brother James to deal with the problem right away. I felt sick to my stomach when I saw the same smug expression on her face that I had witnessed at my engagement party with David. I inhaled deeply and turned to face the mirror. My wrist was adorned with a handcrafted bracelet fashioned by my research team, the exquisite clothing grandmother Martha had assisted me in selecting, and Michael's first present to me, a lovely necklace including a little microscope pendant. What do you want to do? When I called Michael, he inquired. They can still be taken out, or we can put it off. I support you no matter what you decide. I realized then that I had allowed them to dictate my happiness all my life. Not today. We're getting married, I stated confidently. They can stay, but I'm done letting them write my story. The ceremony got underway. Dr. Anderson, the director of my department, escorted me down the aisle with pride. Everything else vanished when I saw Michael waiting for me with love and compassion in his eyes. We exchanged vows that we had written ourselves. Everyone laughed when Michael pledged to constantly support my scientific endeavors, adding, even if it means converting more rooms into lab space. From peer reviews to late-night science talks, I vowed to be his partner in everything. The reception followed. I believed I was ready for anything, but I was surprised by what transpired next. Lisa pretended to be the maid of honor and got to her feet, holding a glass of champagne. She began by describing how she had saved me from making terrible mistakes, and how she was always looking out for her big sister. Beneath the table, I felt Michael's fingers clasp mine. I noticed my research team stiffening up, poised to step in. Linda was getting up from her chair a little. However, for the first time in my life, I was able to fight my own fights without assistance. Calmly and professionally, as I would have addressed a lecture hall, I stood up, holding my own glass. "I think it's time for the bride to make a toast of her own," I replied. What came next? Well, that merits an update of its own. Let's simply say that speaking your truth with dignity might sometimes be the best form of retaliation rather than being silent. Update 5. Here is what transpired when I made my toast after my previous update regarding Lisa attending my wedding. As I stood there, staring at my sister's arrogant face, I experienced an odd feeling of peace. I'd been lecturing academically for years, so I knew how to control a room. I started by saying, "For those who don't know me well, I'm a scientist. We work with truth and facts. So allow me to share some family-related truths." There was a silence in the room. My sister, who was married at the time, was in bed with my then-fiancé 3 years ago. My parents were more concerned with preserving Lisa's reputation than with my wounded heart when I found them. At last, Lisa's smile wavered. Tom, her husband, whom she had brought as a sign of family unity, suddenly got to his feet. His voice was tight as he asked, "The baby, Tom? Is that why you've been avoiding the paternity test?" There was an overwhelming quiet in the room. Lisa placed a protective hand over her growing tummy. I went on, speaking steadily. "There has always been a trend in my family. Lisa's happiness comes first. They pleaded with me to remain silent after she ruined my first engagement. They helped her get in when she arrived here without permission. But today, I said, is about true family, the type that makes you stronger rather than weaker. My research group, who take pride in my accomplishments. Michael's family, who embraced me with unmatched warmth. My grandmother, who never failed to recognize me for who I am." Tom was the first to go. Lisa called his name and ran after him. My mother was crying as my parents followed. The room's atmosphere abruptly lightened when the door closed behind them. Then my grandmother got up and held up her glass. In her own words, "To Elena and Michael. To truth, to real love, and to the family we choose." The remainder of the reception was excellent. Everyone relaxed without the burden of pretense. My study team secretly practiced a surprise dance, which they performed. I found out the following morning that Tom had requested a paternity test and filed for divorce. For once, I didn't feel obligated to assist in picking up the pieces when Lisa's meticulously constructed world fell apart. Update 6. A year has passed since my wedding and the amazing things that happened there. I wanted to give the community that helped me through everything one last update because so much has changed. Michael and I are expecting our first child, which is the major news initially. My first emotion upon seeing the positive test result was one of terror. It brought back memories of my own familial relationships. However, Michael's answer was ideal. He wrapped his arms around me and said, "This kid's going to have the best mom, a brilliant scientist who knows how to love unconditionally." The family of Michael and Linda has been amazing. Linda was thrilled about my latest research article as well as the baby when we told them. "This child is going to have such an amazing role model," she remarked, describing my work in the journal. I've heard tidbits of information regarding Lisa's situation from my grandmother Martha. Tom's suspicion that the baby wasn't his was validated by the paternity test. She is currently trying to start again while living with our parents. The reality of being a single mother has replaced the opulent lifestyle and fancy clothing. I occasionally have a slight sense of sadness, not precisely guilt, for the way things turned out. Michael's statement, "Consequences aren't cruel, they're just truth in action," comes to mind next. I'm doing well with my research. Michael and I worked together to build a new laboratory, and the university recently granted money for it. His inventive architecture and my research needs make for the ideal combination of our skills. Our work collaboration has only improved our friendship on a personal level. In my new lab, our baby will have a dedicated space, a secure enclosed play area, where they may be close to me as I work. Michael created it himself, adding all the safety features he could think of while still making it engaging for a child's growth. My circumstances haven't changed much, but I have. I no longer feel the need to compete for attention or prove myself. In our household, there is no hierarchy of love or success, only mutual understanding, support, and sincere joy in one another's accomplishments. Grandmother Martha, who is thrilled to be a great-grandmother, comes to visit frequently. She's already crocheting the baby little lab jackets while entertaining us with tales of my own early science projects. Even now, my parents still make an effort to connect, generally through family. I'm not ready, but they want to be involved in their grandchild's life. Some wounds require real change rather than just time to heal. As I reflect on my path, I see that responsibility or blood relationships aren't the key to creating a meaningful family. It's about finding people that love you for who you are, celebrate your happiness, and encourage your aspirations. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who supported me and followed my tale. Although life isn't flawless, it is genuinely and delightfully mine. My mom prioritized my sister's brief romance over supporting me during motherhood and the birth of her grandchild. I, 32F, work as an emergency room physician at a large Boston hospital. My baby was christened 2 days ago after I gave birth to her a few weeks ago. My mother, 58F, is now upset that I did not ask her to the wedding or even select her as a godparent. I would like to describe the complex circumstances that resulted in this choice. My relationship with my ex, 34M, a cardiologist at our hospital, ended during my pregnancy, thus I voluntarily became a single mother. After meeting during residency, we dated for 3 years and lived together for 2, which I considered to be a stable relationship. Given our steady jobs and long-term relationship, I brought up marriage when I found out I was expecting. He said nonetheless, that he needed more time to determine whether he was prepared for marriage. I knew I couldn't wait forever at that point in my life because I had a demanding job in emergency medicine. I threatened to end our relationship if he didn't propose. I'm accustomed to making snap decisions because I work as an emergency room physician, and I was ready to be a single mother. Even before I gave him the ultimatum, I knew in my heart that we would end our relationship. What successful marriage begins with one after all? I was right when he moved out in a matter of weeks. At first, he said he wanted to play the role of father. But he also decided he wasn't prepared for fatherhood following our separation. He is now paying child support after I hired a lawyer and spoke with legal medical colleagues. He is welcome to visit at any time, but he hasn't expressed any interest in me, even though I have full custody. I need to focus on my cardiology fellowship right now, he said, almost as if I weren't balancing my own medical career while pregnant. However, my mother's actions during this whole ordeal are the true problem, not my ex. I was mentally in a bad place when my relationship ended early in my pregnancy. Since we are educated to spot the symptoms of depression as medical professionals, I realized I needed help. My coworkers also noticed, particularly when working lengthy overnight shifts in the emergency room. Families usually help out in these kinds of situations, but my friends were the only ones who really stood by me. While running their own medical practices, my 2 best friends from residency, Kelly, 31F, a pediatrician, and Maria, 32F, another emergency room physician, came to see me as much as they could. I automatically chose them to be my daughter's godmothers because they were the only people who were with me when I went into labor. My mother's exclusion was not a hasty decision. I worked extra ER shifts to earn money for maternity leave while I was pregnant, living alone in my condo close to the hospital. Working 12-hour shifts while pregnant and handling trauma cases wasn't easy. Since Kelly's hospital is distant from mine and Maria is married with a small son, I turned down my friend's offer to stay with me closer to my due date. I had wanted to depend on my mom. She abruptly became more active in my life after finding out about my pregnancy on social media. We weren't very close before that because she usually gave preference to my younger sister, Lisa, 25F. There was an obvious division in our family dynamics. Dad and I were one unit, and Lisa and Mom were another. We only got to see each other on birthdays or holidays once I departed for college. When my dad died 2 years ago after an unexpected heart attack, everything changed. I was working an emergency room shift that night, so I wasn't blind to the irony. My already shaky relationship with my mother and sister was all but broken after his funeral. Even though Lisa and Mom were still inseparable, there was always an imperceptible barrier between us when I first saw them. I eventually came to terms with the fact that Mom valued Lisa more. I found it strange that Mom's conduct altered when I told her I was pregnant. As she started to visit, she expressed her excitement about being a grandma. I phoned her to ask her to stay with me during the last few weeks of my pregnancy, when I was having a lot of back discomfort after working longer shifts. She made a commitment but abruptly canceled, saying she didn't feel safe leaving her house unattended because of thefts in her neighborhood. Despite my severe disappointment, I handled things on my own and didn't pursue the issue. But my mother was the first person I phoned when I went into labor while working the night shift at the hospital. When I told her that I needed her there with me, she first claimed that she was too busy to make it happen. I couldn't comprehend what kind of obligations she could have because it was 2 a.m. on a Sunday. She finally acknowledged that she couldn't be there because she had to be there for Lisa when I pressured her, getting more and more upset in between contractions. She was unable to be with me during the last few weeks of my pregnancy, apparently because Lisa had moved in with her a few weeks prior. Being there for Lisa was the first priority, according to my mother, who revealed that she had recently been abandoned by her boyfriend and was in a very vulnerable state of mind. I was in too much pain to fight, but I honestly couldn't understand how anything could be more significant than being there when your grandchild was born. I hung up after she gave me her explanation and instead called Maria and Kelly. Maria, who works at my hospital, arrived in 15 minutes, took care of all the medical papers, and Kelly arrived right in the delivery room. They supported me the entire time, including helping me get settled for the next few days until I felt confident enough to be alone with the baby. In contrast, my mother didn't get in touch with me for a whole week following the birth of my child. Behaving as casually as if nothing had happened, she texted to ask whether she could come that day. "Hello, sweetie, I thought I'd stop by today to see my granddaughter," she wrote in her message. "What time is most effective?" I didn't reply since that really got under my skin. I acted as though I wasn't home when she unexpectedly arrived that night and stayed until she departed. After that, she kept messaging and tried contacting me multiple times, but I never answered. It's amazing that she never felt the need to express regret or even to admit what had occurred. She continued to send texts like, "Missing my grandbaby" and "Can't wait to babysit," acting as though nothing was wrong. She must have noticed I was angry with her after a time. But rather than offering a clear apology, she had Lisa text me to try to justify what she had done. The fact that Lisa's letter began, "I'm really sorry that mom couldn't be there because of me when you went into labor," only served to exacerbate the problem. "However, you must comprehend what I was going through." She went on to say that after dating him for just 2 weeks, she had been dumped by someone she had loved for a very long time. She seems to have had feelings for this man since college. She never made a move because he had a girlfriend at the time. Even after graduating, she remained friends with him, stayed in touch with him, and still harbored feelings for him. After a recent breakup with his fiancée, that guy asked Lisa out 3 weeks later. After 2 weeks of dating, he told her he was not ready for another committed relationship so soon after terminating his long-term one and that he simply wanted to be friends. He blocked her everywhere and called her psychotic and crazy for taking a casual rebound so seriously after Lisa became upset and began to argue with him. In a normal situation, I could have felt sorry for her. However, Lisa is not a youngster going through her first heartbreak. She is 25 years old. He was only using her as a rebound, and she should have known it. Even worse, her friends specifically advised her not to approach him because they knew he had recently ended a committed relationship. I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for her. And I was incensed that our mother chose not to attend her granddaughter's birth because she couldn't handle ending her relationship with a man she had dated for 2 weeks. This came after 9 whole months of feigning excitement over the baby. Since neither of them could see anything wrong with their actions, Lisa's message just made matters worse. I blocked them both on social media, email, and the phone. It was around a week before they tried to get in touch with me again in any other way. The christening ceremony in the church where our family has been for centuries followed. Only a few of my hospital co-workers attended the small, private ceremony, including my aunt, with whom I have a great relationship, and my godmothers, Maria and Kelly. My mother somehow found out about the ceremony even though I'm positive none of these folks told her about it. Since she knows them from her years of volunteering at the church, I have a suspicion that one of the choir women may have told her. I'm going to report the person in question to the church administration because their gossip was very uncalled for and created a lot of drama. When my mother learned, she came to my condo the day after the christening. My mom wouldn't leave, even when I claimed I wasn't home, and I was attempting to put my daughter to sleep after a very demanding morning. She simply continued to ring the doorbell repeatedly. My daughter was becoming more and more agitated by the minute, so after 30 minutes of this, I opened the door to face her. She began scolding me right away for not being designated godmother and not being invited to the christening. We got into a furious disagreement when I told her that I had already made up my mind and that she couldn't change it. Her explanation was that she was merely attempting to support Lisa because, in her words, she was obviously going through something terrible. At least you had your doctor friends by your side, my mother said. However, Lisa's friends had specifically advised her not to date that guy, so she was unable to even discuss her problems with them. All she had to talk to was me, and she was struggling greatly. She moved in with me for that reason. She couldn't stand being by herself. Instead of being so cold and selfish, you ought to have shown more empathy as the older sister. What I was hearing was unbelievable. I told her that I didn't feel sorry for Lisa because she was solely to blame, and I felt even less sorry for my mother because she took the decision to not support me throughout delivery, not to mention to break her commitment to assist me in the last few weeks of my pregnancy. I could hear my daughter crying inside before the conflict got out of hand. I informed my mother that I couldn't waste time arguing with her about her bad decisions because I had to look after my child. Before I phoned security, I urged her to leave and shut the door in her face. Even when she eventually left, things didn't stop there. Since then, a number of my hospital co-workers have informed me that my mother has been disparaging me on social media, calling me evil and self-centered. I've seen the screenshots that people have sent me while I blocked her. I've done everything in my power to be a good mother to both of my daughters, but I guess some people just can't see that. She wrote in one of her posts. I can't be in one place at once. Being cut off from my granddaughter's life is my punishment for choosing to be there for the daughter who had no one else. My heart breaks for Lisa, who still hopes her sister will understand what she was going through, she said in another post. Although Lisa feels bad for causing me to miss the birth of my first grandchild, she is not the issue. I wish some people weren't so narcissistic and egotistical that they are unable to comprehend their sister's suffering. I was deeply affected by the most recent post. Karma always comes back around, she wrote. When you experience this firsthand as a mother, we'll see how you feel. A mother cannot be selfish, but a child can. So I'll forgive you for everything. A number of family members have contacted me, advising me to simply speak with Lisa and Mom and attempt to comprehend their perspective. My mother's posts have even been shared by certain members of my extended family, who have commented on them about how I'm tearing the family apart. I want an outside opinion even though I don't think I've done anything wrong. The stress of returning to work in the emergency room while taking care of a newborn isn't helping, and I'm aware that pregnancy and new motherhood can make you more emotional and irritable. However, it seems to me that my mother made her decision apparent when she put my sister's 2-week relationship drama ahead of the arrival of her grandson. Every day as physicians, we are taught to make tough choices, some of which require balancing conflicting priorities. That night, my mother made a decision as well. And she must now deal with the fallout. I've made the decision to put my daughter in a stable, drama-free home with folks who have shown they will truly be there for us when we need them. Update 1. Since my last post and the events that followed, I have given this situation a lot of thought from every perspective. Since some of you requested to see what was being stated, I would like to share the specific postings my mother has made since her social media campaign has escalated. I have tried my best to be a good mother to both of my daughters, but I guess some people just can't understand that I can't be everywhere at once, she wrote in her initial post. Therefore, I made the decision to support the daughter who was experiencing the greatest type of heartbreak and had no one else to lean on. Yes, that makes me the world's largest villain. But what does that make the daughter who excluded me from her life for such a trivial reason, and who refused to let me attend my granddaughter's baptism, any less of a monster? The epithet heartless would be appropriate. A few hours later, the second message said, I feel very sorry for Lisa. Lisa continues to hope that perhaps my other daughter will be understanding and attempt to comprehend what she was going through despite everything that has transpired. But I'm aware that it's useless. I know Lisa isn't the issue, but she doesn't want to be the reason I never get to be my first granddaughter's godmother. All I want is for her to see that and quit holding herself responsible for whatever has occurred. Additionally, I wish that some individuals would quit being so narcissistic and egotistical that they are unable to comprehend their sister's suffering. Yesterday's post, Karma Always Strikes Back, was the most current. A mother cannot be selfish, but a child may, so I will see you through this as a mother and forgive you for anything. She has shared numerous depressing statements about the challenges of motherhood in addition to these significant posts. She has gone to considerable lengths to describe all the drama in detail and paint me as the bad guy for everyone who contacts her directly to ask what's going on. I handle actual situations on a daily basis as an emergency physician. I find it not only upsetting but almost amusing when my mother and family attempt to portray my sister's 2-week relationship drama as some sort of serious problem that excused her from attending her grandchild's birth. I've received regular messages from a number of my relatives and uncles accusing me of being needlessly harsh with my mother and sister. One aunt even said that I should get therapy before I irreversibly harm my relationship with my family since I may be stubborn because of postpartum depression. Additionally, I've gotten messages from members of my extended family that I haven't spoken to in years. They are all suddenly quite knowledgeable about the dynamics of my family. They constantly talking about how supportive my mother was during my pregnancy, conveniently ignoring the fact that her support primarily took the form of remarks on social media and sporadic visits when it suited her. I'm even more sure of my choice now that I've read all of their messages and seen my mother's posts. That night, my mother made her decision. Her daughter going into labor was not as important to her as my sister's romantic disappointment. The facts won't change, no matter how much she tries to change the story. I will refrain from participating in their social media drama. I won't try to explain myself or post my side of the story to relatives who have already made up their minds. My daughter and my career must be my top priorities. I have to take care of a newborn while working 12-hour shifts in the emergency room. I don't have time or energy for folks who are solely interested in making my life more stressful. Through it all, Maria and Kelly have been amazing. In addition to bringing food and checking in on us, they have been volunteering to monitor the baby while I take a break between shifts. I want people like this in my daughter's life, people who are there when it counts, not just when it's convenient. So, no, I don't believe I'm being harsh or callous. Regarding who I can and cannot rely on, I'm being practical. I made my choice and my mother made hers. Update 2. Since my last post, which was about a week ago, things have gotten much worse. My mother must have realized that her online drama campaign wasn't receiving the response she was hoping for because I haven't replied to any of her posts on social media. She made the decision to come see me again this morning, but this time she brought Lisa along. After a particularly long night shift in the emergency room, I was at home trying to get my kid to go asleep when they unexpectedly arrived. They said they wanted to apologize through the door, but I didn't want to get into another argument right then. I was aware that they would ultimately want to clear the air, which would entail repeating everything that had transpired, even if I answered the door and they apologized. I lacked the mental and physical stamina to do that. Through the door, I informed them that I had just placed my kid to sleep and was occupied with her. I clarified that if they truly wanted to apologize, they would have to wait until I was free to speak because I wasn't in the right frame of mind for a conversation at the moment. Knowing that if I was impolite, they may start yelling and wake my daughter, I made an effort to be as courteous as possible. However, they began yelling anyhow, so I shouldn't have bothered to keep things civil. They drove all the way here, and I had refused to even open the door to let them in, so they started scolding me for being rude. Just so you know, I hadn't requested that they do any of that. My mother began yelling at me, accusing me of destroying the family and using my daughter as a weapon against her. Lisa added that I was being theatrical and self-centered about the whole thing. Despite the fact that a baby was napping inside, they continued to get louder and louder. Something inside of me exploded as I heard my daughter begin to stir and fuss via the baby monitor. I opened the door and made it clear that I would call the police and request a restraining order if they didn't leave my property right away. They appeared surprised, most likely because they didn't think I would defend myself. My mother attempted to explain that I was exaggerating and that, as a grandma, she had rights. At least Lisa appeared to understand that I wasn't playing a bluff. She began dragging our mom away. Despite being pulled away, my mother continued to move. She continued to yell things like, "You'll regret this when you need my help," and curse at me while calling me derogatory names. And "you can't deny me my granddaughter indefinitely." As she pulled her away, Lisa murmured to herself that I was always like this, and that I was never able to deal with things like a normal person. I decided not to call the police this time because I didn't want to make things worse, but I won't think twice if they come by again. Their actions are now having an impact on my daughter, so it's no longer just about me. She was crying from all the chaos and completely awake when I returned inside. I've already told the security staff at my building about the incident and given them my sister's and mother's descriptions. In case I ever need to pursue legal action, I also kept a record of everything that happened, including the time and the words that were said. I'm not keeping them away from my daughter because I'm upset about what transpired during my labor, to be clear. They have repeatedly demonstrated that they don't respect boundaries and will always put their own feelings ahead of my daughter's welfare, which is why I'm keeping them away. The most recent instance of such was today. At least their actions made it quite evident that I am not at all like my mother. Even if she may not care about me, I will stop at nothing to shield my child from harmful conduct, even if it means severing familial relations. Update 3. My life has mercifully returned to a manageable pattern since my previous post, which was almost 2 months ago. Overall, things have been going well, despite my extreme workload at work and taking care of my baby. I haven't spoken to my mother or Lisa in weeks, and Maria and Kelly come to visit often to spend time with my kid and me. Lisa continued to try to get in touch for some time. She made several other social media accounts to message me after I blocked her initial one. In those letters, she described how, because Mom was so furious over everything, she had taken the side of our mother in the most recent argument. Lisa asserted that Mom was too arrogant to acknowledge her mistakes because of her advanced age. Lisa asked me to initiate contact in order to help Mom mend her bond with her granddaughter. Regardless of how many texts she sent, I never replied to any of them. She seemed to grow weary of making new accounts eventually and gave up completely. I sincerely appreciate that because my position has not changed. My mother must apologize before I will consider forgiving her. I won't consider allowing her to become a grandmother until after that. I'm perfectly happy with my life as it is right now. Taking care of my baby has become a lot simpler after I switched to more regular day shifts at the hospital. My coworkers have been tremendously supportive, particularly the parents among them. They're aware of the difficulties in juggling a rigorous medical job with being a single mom. Our lives have become even more reliant on Maria and Kelly. My daughter has effectively adopted Maria's 3-year-old boy as her big brother, and it's adorable to watch them interact at our weekend get-togethers. In order to administer all of my daughter's examinations and immunizations individually, Kelly has been organizing her pediatric clinic schedule. It is impossible to overstate the difference between my mother's actions and my friend's unwavering support. My mother and sister appear to think that the secret to establishing relationships is using theatrical gestures and emotional manipulation, even though Maria and Kelly have assimilated into our daily lives effortlessly. They still don't realize that trustworthy behavior, not ostentatious, theatrical displays of emotion when it suits them, is what builds trust. At last, some of my relatives have begun to distance themselves. Some have even expressed regret for becoming involved before fully understanding the situation. Initially supporting my mother, one aunt said that she had observed similar patterns of manipulative conduct from mom in previous family contexts. In this calm setting, my daughter is flourishing. Kelly reassures me that she is in excellent health and that she is meeting all of her developmental goals on time. For both of us, the consistency of our current regimen has been excellent. There are moments when I question whether my mother is aware that she isn't getting to see her granddaughter grow up. She was unable to put her daughter's needs first during one of the most important times in life, not because I'm trying to be spiteful. Her priorities are clear from the fact that she put Lisa's small romantic setback ahead of attending her grandchild's birth. I recognize the irony that, despite my mother accusing me of using my daughter as a weapon, she attempted to mend our relationship, but only on her terms, by utilizing my pregnancy and her position as a grandmother. She desired all of the benefits of being a grandma without having to deal with the obligations or compromises that come with the position. I've gained a great deal of knowledge about motherhood over the last few months. It's now quite evident that being a mother involves being there for your child when they need you, not just when it's convenient or when you want something. My mother's behavior during my pregnancy and labor gave me a clear indication of the type of grandma she would be, someone who puts Lisa's drama and her own demands before of my daughter's welfare. I'm concentrating on creating the secure, caring atmosphere I want for my daughter to grow up in right now. Even if she doesn't have as many biological relatives, she does have something much more valuable: grown-ups who always prioritize her needs. The door isn't shut all the time. I would think about reintegrating my mother into our life if she ever truly admits her actions and extends a heartfelt apology. However, I refuse to wait for that to occur. Furthermore, I will not jeopardize my daughter's emotional health in the meanwhile. Protecting your child from harmful family dynamics might sometimes be the healthiest thing you can do for them, even if it means avoiding your own mother. At my late husband's funeral, my in-laws returned after 8 years, demanding control of our company and house as his biological parents. Recently, I, a 34-year-old woman, lost my 38-year-old spouse to leukemia. After 10 years of dating and 8 years of marriage, we were business and life partners. As I deal with an unforeseen circumstance that arose at his funeral, I am still trying to digest everything. 5 years ago, my husband received a leukemia diagnosis. In recent months, his condition dramatically worsened despite intensive treatment. He stayed committed to our plastic recycling company, which we started from the beginning, despite his illness. He would video call me to talk about operations and future plans, even from his hospital bed. He was committed and progressive all the way to the end, and that was simply who he was. His funeral last week was where the real trouble started. I was surprised to see my brother-in-law, 40, and my in-laws, both 65 there. After a major falling out over our business endeavor, they had not spoken to us for 8 years. They had consistently given preference to my brother-in-law, treating my husband as though he were somehow less deserving of their care and assistance. They made a concerted effort to dissuade my husband when we first started our firm, saying he was simply mimicking his brother, who had announced a similar initiative. However, this was after we had already completed our market research and started establishing our business. I remained calm and kept my distance from them during the funeral service. But when the majority of people had left, my in-laws came up to me and said they had important things to talk about. At first, people tried to seem understanding by offering their sympathies and inquiring about my husband's last days. I responded succinctly, recalling that they were aware of his health but never paid him a visit during his illness. Then their real motivations became apparent. They began discussing proper inheritance and family responsibilities. To my surprise, they insisted that I give them full control of our company, saying that my brother-in-law could help them run it more effectively. They changed their strategy and demanded our house after I adamantly refused. Their justification was especially offensive. They said that a widow without children didn't require such a large house and that they could make more money by renting out their current residence. Their boldness left me speechless. My husband and I had planned our future together, and this was the house we had created. We have recollections of our lives together in every nook and cranny. It seemed as though they were attempting to obliterate our entire history with their demand. They got combative, threatening legal action and asserting their rights as his parents when I told them that this was not happening at all. They are unaware that my spouse had prepared for this possibility because he thought it might occur. He made a video addressing his parents in particular a month prior to his death. If they ever attempted to seize his assets after his passing, he wanted me to play it for them. I now see why he believed it was important, even if at the time I thought he was being too careful. I have yet to play the video for them. I drove home crying after they threatened me at the funeral, and I didn't think about it until I was by myself in our house. I need to gather my strength before I confront them with the contents of the tape, even though I know it will change everything. I'm concentrating on managing our company for the time being, as my husband and I had intended. He ensured that all the legal documentation was in order at the time of his initial diagnosis. Even though I know I'm right, their demands and threats are making an already unbearably difficult period emotionally taxing for me. I'm having a lot of trouble deciding when to show them the video. A part of me is eager to get it over with, and another part of me wants to wait until they really attempt to file a lawsuit. In any case, I am aware that this is not yet finished. My in-laws' treatment of my spouse throughout his life is painfully recalled by the current circumstance. I observed the glaring disparity in their treatment of their boys when we initially began dating in our mid-20s. Despite his troubles with alcohol and his incapacity to maintain a job, they believed that my brother-in-law could do no wrong. My husband, on the other hand, who put in a great deal of effort at work and always attempted to support his family, was only criticized and dismissed. The last straw for me was a specific Christmas dinner almost 8 years ago. Instead of celebrating the fact that we had just landed our first significant contract for our recycling firm, my in-laws spent the entire evening disparaging our endeavor in comparison to my brother-in-law's comparable business concept. It's important to note that after learning of our achievement, he quickly came up with his strategy. A furious dispute broke out during the dinner when my father-in-law said my husband was overly ambitious and needed to know his place. We didn't really communicate with them again after that. My husband finally understood that their toxic behavior would never change, even though he had always sought their praise despite my advice to advocate for himself. Their total absence during my husband's illness is what makes their current actions even more egregious. We didn't deliberately conceal his leukemia diagnosis from them. Even though they must have been aware of how bad his situation was, they never once inquired about it, sought out, or expressed any desire in getting back together, even though the news had traveled through family connections and they lived in the same city. Over the past 5 years, we have solely concentrated on expanding our company and helping one another during his medical treatment. 3 states had taken notice of our plastic recycling firm, and we were even highlighted in a number of environmental business periodicals. Even on his hardest days in the hospital, my husband would light up when we discussed our most recent projects or our goals for future growth because he was so pleased with what we had created together. His final month of life was especially challenging. When he realized he was running out of time, he started organizing things very methodically. He recorded that video message for his parents, reorganized all of our business records, and revised his will. I recall the day he took the recording. Despite being in his hospital room, he insisted on wearing his favorite business outfit because he was having one of his best days. He handled things with remarkable composure, far more so than I did. He warned me that day, "They'll try to take everything we built, not because they need it, but because they never believed in me. Within ourselves. They will want to demonstrate that they were correct all along." He forced me to make a commitment to maintain my ground and defend the things we had created together, including our shared dream as well as our worldly possessions. I've only seen the video message he taped that day once, but it's really impactful. He talks about all the years of partiality, the contemptuous remarks, and the occasions when they choose to believe in his brother rather than him. But in its clarity, it is painful, honest, and unvarnished. It is neither furious nor bitter. He also talks about me, how everything we created together was intended to remain just that, ours, and how I was ultimately the only family he truly had. I received a string of progressively hostile texts from my in-laws the day following the altercation at the burial. They asserted that they were morally entitled to his legacy since they were his parents. Totally ignoring their own part in the alienation, they even implied that I had somehow coerced their son into removing them from his life. I had stolen their son and was now stealing his legacy, and their most recent mail threatened to expose this. My spouse had painstakingly documented everything, which made their threats all the more ridiculous. Every significant choice pertaining to our company was decided upon collaboratively and documented appropriately. All of our accomplishments were the result of years of diligence, forethought, and commitment, exactly the traits his parents had disregarded in him all of his childhood. I came upon a picture from our first business meeting last night while perusing some old pictures at his home office. Sitting at our small leased office space with our first recycling machine, we were so youthful and full of hope. My husband's parents had refused to assist, claiming it was a silly dream, so he had taken out a personal loan to purchase that equipment. By transforming that one machine into a cutting-edge operation with more than 50 employees, we disproved their claims. He had preserved some old emails, including ones from his parents, which I also found. It was like witnessing their relationship fall apart in slow motion as you read through them. Their criticism made every accomplishment seem less significant, and every accomplishment was compared to his brother. In fact, they accused him of wanting to eclipse his brother by launching our company in their most recent email, which was sent 8 years ago. Ironically, they never believed in his legacy when he was alive, but now they say they deserve it. They never paid us a visit, never acknowledged our accomplishments, and never showed any curiosity about what we had constructed. They didn't get in touch, even after our creative recycling technique was highlighted in the local media. However, now that he's gone, they feel the need to take possession of all he put so much effort into creating. They want to challenge the will, according to their most recent threat, which they got this morning. They say they have proof that I had an undue effect on my husband in his last days. It's nearly absurd. He was more focused and resolute than ever in those last days. He made sure that everything was legally guaranteed because he knew exactly what he wanted. My in-laws have no case, according to the legal team at our company, with whom I have been talking. My husband's will is unambiguous and compliant with the law, and everything is appropriately recorded. Additionally, they have encouraged me to preserve all correspondence from my in-laws because their threatening comments can prove helpful in the event that this goes to court. When they unexpectedly arrived at our corporate headquarters yesterday, it was their most recent attempt at intimidation. Demanding to address the board of directors, they created quite a stir in the lobby. It's still the family business we started together, and we don't even have a board. They yelled that they would expose the truth about how their kid was coerced out of his family before our security team had to escort them out. The most agonizing aspect of it all is seeing them destroy their own son's legacy in an effort to seize what he created. My spouse finally realized that nothing he accomplished would ever be good enough after years of attempting to gain their favor. He ultimately found serenity in embracing that and concentrating on our shared life. Everything will be different because of the video he left behind. In addition to addressing their recent attempts to seize his money, he also directly addresses their years of favoritism and emotional manipulation. Speaking with the same quiet strength he often displayed in business meetings, he taped it while sitting in his hospital room in his finest suit on one of his final lucid days. I'm going to their house tomorrow to show them the footage. I've come to the conclusion that waiting any longer is pointless. They must know precisely where they are and why. My husband planned for their behavior since he knew them well enough to anticipate it. It's time for them to hear his parting speech. Just in case things go out of hand, I've already made plans for our lawyer to be available tomorrow. This video's content goes beyond simply criticizing their most recent actions. It provides a thorough description of how they treated him over the course of his life, including particular incidents and dates. Even in this, he was meticulous. The thing that most amazes me about this whole situation is exactly what my spouse predicted it would be. He was aware that they would want to take credit for the things we created together, not because they were proud of them but more because they would never be able to believe that he was successful without their help. He knew that, like they had done during his life, they would attempt to discredit his decisions even after he passed away. The irony is that things may have turned out differently if they had even a small amount of interest in his life during his leukemia battle. However, they made the decision to remain silent throughout his entire sickness, never contacting him or inquiring about his health. They now have the audacity to assert ownership of what he and I jointly constructed. I'm not only defending our company and our house, I'm defending his legacy, our common goal, and the real him. Not the son they rejected, but the intelligent, compassionate, and driven man who created something significant in spite of their lack of belief in him. They will finally hear his final words to them tomorrow, and they will see why their allegations are unfounded. I'm currently fortifying myself and getting ready for the future. As he would have desired, the business is still thriving, and his parents will soon, very soon, find out precisely how their son felt about their unexpected interest in his legacy. Update 1. I wanted to share some updates from my last post, which was a week ago. Despite the huge emotional toll of losing my husband and coping with his parents' threats, I'm lucky to have an amazing support network. To assist me cope with this new reality, my parents have temporarily moved in with me. Although he still works, my father has taken up all of my husband's practical responsibilities, including food shopping, housework, and bill payment. I've never been good at remembering to buy necessities. Since our housekeeper just resigned for personal reasons, my mother has been handling the cooking and cleaning. Unbeknownst to me, their presence has been a blessing. Concentrating on my profession has become essential to me. The fantastic team my husband and I created together is primarily responsible for the efficient operation of our company today. Throughout this trying time, they have demonstrated amazing loyalty and support. During our management meeting last week, a number of longtime staff members related how my husband had aided their professional development. Hearing these recollections was both touching and devastating. But sometimes I'm hit hard by the fact that he's not here. His coffee mug was still on the desk, just where he left it on his last day of work, and I almost lost it when I was in his office yesterday trying to find some paperwork. I miss the little things we used to do together, like having coffee in the morning, talking about company plans, taking lunch together, and even jokingly arguing about how to organize files. The ongoing fear of legal action from my in-laws is what makes things more difficult. Yesterday, their attorney got in touch with our legal team and made nebulous claims regarding familial rights and undue influence. Even though our attorneys told me that these accusations are unfounded, dealing with these attacks during a time of grief is nonetheless extremely taxing. Our clients' and business partners' support has been tremendous. Several people have expressed their confidence in my abilities to continue running the company, and many have written poignant letters about their experiences working with my spouse. It means a lot, especially in light of my in-laws' attempts to cast doubt on my competence to manage the company. In part to keep myself occupied and in part to make sure everything keeps going well, I've been putting in more hours at the office. Our environmental impact objectives have always been very important to my spouse, and I'm committed to upholding and advancing his vision. He was very enthusiastic about a project we are now discussing: the opening of a new recycling center in a neighboring state. Through it all, my parents have been incredible. One of them is always available if I need assistance thanks to the rotation system they have set up. In an attempt to better understand my day-to-day existence, my mother has even begun to study about how our firm is run. In order to filter out any efforts at communication from my in-laws, Dad has been taking care of all the incoming mail and phone calls. Coming home to our residence every evening is the most difficult part. Every room has memories, and without him, it can feel impossible at times. However, I'm making an effort to put more emphasis on my appreciation for the 10 years we had together than on the future we lost. Grief is the cost of love, as my mother always reminds me, and my spouse was worth every cry. Update 2. My in-laws decided to challenge the will 2 weeks ago. Our lawyer told me about the formal proceedings during our recent meeting. Even though we're not overly concerned about the result, dealing with this pointless legal dispute at this already trying time is aggravating. Now my in-laws have changed their strategy. They tried to scare me with their alleged plan in an email they sent me yesterday. They said they were entitled to everything since they were his flesh and blood, and that my attempt to scare them away with the video, which I haven't even shown them yet, wouldn't work. They even went so far as to declare that they no longer only came for the property. They now feel entitled to shares in the company. Fortunately, courts do not function according to what individuals believe they are entitled to. The communication actually thrilled my lawyer, who said it would be helpful proof of their objectives. I sent all of this information to our legal staff, who are constructing a more compelling argument against their assertions. All of this has been made possible by my parents' tremendous support. In the hopes that they could react better to a different set of parents, they even offered to speak with my in-laws, but I turned them down. I want them to proceed with their case at this point because I am certain that it will be a complete waste of their time and money, which is precisely what I desire given their actions. The last several weeks have been hectic, with a steady flow of people coming to see how I'm doing or to express condolences since they were unable to make it to the service. I've hardly had time to think about my own emotions because I've been so busy taking care of business and entertaining myself. However, I nearly lost it the other day while I was in my husband's office trying to find some documents pertaining to my job. I only hoped I could speak to him again, to express my love and miss him, because I could picture him there so vividly. My top priority right now is making sure our company keeps growing. I am aware that he would have preferred that. His drive has inspired me to put in even more effort. Even on the most difficult days, I am motivated to keep going by his vision for the success of our business. With all the paperwork my husband left behind, our legal team is confident in our position. Responses to any possible allegations of undue influence or family rights have already been drafted. Everyone involved in the issue understands the irony of my in-laws attempting to assert any rights after 8 years of total silence. It's touching to see how many lives my husband affected, and my mother has taken to arranging all of the messages and condolence cards we've received. His honesty and inventiveness in the field have been documented by colleagues, business associates, and even rivals. My in-laws' present attempts to portray him as someone who was coerced out of his family are in sharp contrast to these testimonies. The most challenging aspect is keeping my cool during this entire ordeal. Whether it's another threatening email from my in-laws or just the agony of missing him, there are fresh hurdles every day. But I'm committed to preserving everything we created together, not only for me, but also for his legacy. Our senior management team and I will be meeting tomorrow to talk about our expansion plans, which my husband was really looking forward to before he became ill. Even as we navigate these legal obstacles, it feels good to be pursuing his aspirations. I plan to prove him correct when he says that the best form of retaliation is success. Update 3. 2 weeks have passed since my in-laws challenged the will, and yesterday something really intriguing occurred. My brother-in-law, of all people, sent me a note. I was taken aback because we have absolutely nothing to discuss, and it seemed brave of him to get in touch with me considering what his parents are doing. We're absolutely not on terms where we can text each other casually, and we've never been very close. He texted me to ask if he could come over to my house. Something compelled me to give it a shot even though my first reaction was to decline and block his phone. I felt it had something to do with my in-laws, and I had a gut sense this might be significant. I also agreed to meet him because my parents would be home. He brought flowers and offered his condolences when he came, explaining that the circumstances with his parents had prevented him from expressing them appropriately during the burial. This wasn't the kind of behavior I expected, therefore I was surprised by how considerate it was. He had always struck me as being rather noisy and conceited in our past encounters at family get-togethers. Even more unexpectedly, he no longer had the same alcoholic odor as he had years before. His performance appeared to have been thoroughly cleaned up. He rambled on for a while before getting to the subject. He was there to inform me that his parents intended to discredit me and it would not be a pleasant experience. They were making up a story about how I was now rejecting their assertion that my husband had borrowed money from them to launch our company. They intended to spread their lies on social media as they were unable to legally pursue this angle due to the lack of a legally binding contract. I couldn't understand why they believed it would work because it was such a naive plan. But I was glad he came to alert me so I could take preventative action. Then he revealed something more intimate. He had been trying to improve himself over the last few years and had made multiple attempts to get in touch with us. But he lacked the bravery to do so after mistreating his brother for years. He knew it was too late, but now he was here to make amends for everything. I was totally unprepared when he actually began to cry. He was comforted by my father, who was there and prepared him a cup of tea to help him relax. I reassured him that everything would be all right and that I was certain his brother would have valued his gesture when he eventually left. He felt somewhat better as a result of this. In all honesty, I don't believe he was responsible for most of what transpired. Both of his children were let down by their parents. By treating him as the golden child, they believed they were doing him a favor, but in the end, they did neither of their kids any favors and instead spoiled him. I simply feel sorry for them both. They were entitled to better lives and better parents. My viewpoint on this whole situation has changed as a result of my brother-in-law's visit. Both boys were obviously impacted by the poisonous familial dynamics, albeit in different ways. His sibling is just now starting to see the harm their parents inflicted, while my husband found the strength to escape and start a new life. Update 4. After talking to my lawyer, I informed him of what my brother-in-law had told us. In order to use my in-laws' social media posts against them in court, we agreed to wait and see how things would develop. Our legal staff verified that having my brother-in-law testify against his parents would strengthen our case, and he even offered to do so if needed. My in-laws finally posted on social media a few days ago. I emailed them right away to warn them that we would take legal action and file a defamation case if they didn't remove it right away. They probably didn't anticipate such a prompt and stern reaction. When I told them that their own son was now on our side, it probably didn't boost their confidence. Almost instantly, they removed the message, but they insisted in their reply that they would take everything away from me. Their actions have now become nearly monotonous. I blocked their email address and wished them luck with their goals. They can do whatever they want, but now that my brother-in-law, their lone possible ally, is no longer on their side, they will need that luck. I am aware of the irony of the entire situation. They are now frantically striving to leverage family ties they themselves broke years ago in an attempt to obtain a share of the company they once wrote off as a silly dream. All of our legal records, their prior actions, and now the testimony of their own kid all point against them. Our attorneys are optimistic that this will shortly come to an end. They are aware that they are in a precarious position because they promptly took down their defamatory message after being threatened with legal action. Everyone concerned is realizing more and more that they have no case, either morally or legally. Knowing that my spouse was correct all along is what makes me the happiest, not the possibility of winning in court. He diligently prepared for the possibility that they would do something similar. Because of the legal measures he took and the video he left behind, he is still defending what we created together. Our company is still doing very well, and we are proceeding with the plans for growth that my husband was really enthusiastic about. Our clients have been understanding during this entire process, and the team is still very supportive. Honoring his legacy by carrying on with the dream we both shared is ultimately what counts. Now and then, my brother-in-law calls to see how I'm doing. Our family dynamics have changed in a little but significant way. It's never too late for people to own up to their mistakes and make an effort to improve, even though it's too late to save certain relationships. My husband has always had that belief, and I'm beginning to understand why. I am aware that I still have difficult days ahead of me, both personally and professionally, but I am also ready for whatever comes next. That was my husband's responsibility, and I plan to honor him by preserving and expanding everything we created together. My daughter was invited to perform at her cousin's wedding but was later smeared online because her performance drew more attention than the bride. My F49 cousin, F23, asked my daughter, F16, to perform at her wedding reception, but became bitter upon seeing the positive reception to her act. She has since posted about her online, and my daughter is considering quitting original post. I hope this is okay to share here. The reason I'm posting is because of my daughter who's been hurting in the aftermath of a recent performance. I'm sorry in advance for how long this turned out, but any advice from fellow aerialists would be greatly appreciated. My cousin Dana, not real name, had her wedding 2 weeks ago, and she asked if my daughter could perform at her reception. My daughter, Jane, also fake name, has practiced Silk's Lyra for the past few years at a nearby circus studio, and she's also performed with through the studio at small gigs. She hopes to continue into adulthood and become a professional teacher, but this recent incident has shaken her confidence. She has a private Instagram to document her progress performances, and I only post certain performances on my Facebook, her first gig with the studio and her first recital to name a few we're proud of. Some of our relatives saw her performances through my socials, and they watched her perform at her studio's Christmas recital when we hosted Christmas at our home a few years back. Something that surprised her when they visited early to see her. I love how they coordinated that, and Jane said it was her loudest cheering section to date. Dana was one of the relatives who came up early to see her Christmas recital, and she's always been super supportive. She asked me if Jane would be willing to perform at the reception, and I asked on her behalf. Jane was honored and excited when I did, and we already had a portable rig for her too. Though we ended up renting a taller one from her studio. Dana got the idea from a YouTube video featuring an aerialist who performed at a wedding reception, and she showed us while requesting white silks and a white outfit. We scoped out the venue and purchased white silks along with a white costume that Dana approved of, and Jane was really excited throughout. Jane even worked on choreography to a song that Dana requested, and she put a lot of time into it, even asking one of her coaches to help her with it. Dana insisted on paying her for the gig despite Jane not expecting to be paid, and she paid her a few hundred. However, Dana's had a change of heart. Jane received a standing ovation after her performance that surprised her, but we didn't know anything was wrong until Dana went on Facebook a few days later. Dana said she didn't approve of the outfit Jane wore and that she specifically told her to not wear white. She also said my husband and I pressured her to have Jane perform and that the performance gave off an unclassy vibe, lies that my husband and I couldn't believe. We sent Dana numerous costume links, and we purchased the one she liked. There was also nothing wrong with Jane's performance. Dana was one of the people cheering afterwards. Jane received nothing but compliments afterward, but I'm disgusted that she had to see that post after all the work she put into it. The post also had comments disabled for what it's worth. I called Dana to confront her about the lies, but she didn't pick up numerous calls. I then called her parents who, like us, had received messages about her post, and they said that Dana was wrong. They apologized on her behalf and said they were also disgusted. Dana's mom also said that Dana vented to her before making her post a few days after the reception. Dana told her she regretted asking Jane to perform given the attention, compliments and cheers she received for it. Her mom also said that she felt upstaged with Jane wearing white and having to hear how good she was. Dana's parents tried to call her after she made her post, but she didn't answer after their previous conversation ended with her parents telling her she shouldn't be bitter because she specifically asked Jane to perform. Dana's parents reported the post along with us/others, and we've told the truth to those who reached out along with a post to explain our side, stand up for Jane, We have text proof of sending costume links that Dana chose from. Dana's parents also requested to talk to Jane on the phone to apologize for Dana's behavior, and my husband and I told Jane that Dana was wrong, and that we'll be distancing ourselves from Dana permanently. Dana's parents were surprised at her behavior, and we were too, having seen her grow up. Granted, we only see extended family for Thanksgiving and Christmas because we live far, but other relatives were surprised too, as it seemed to come from left field. Maybe there's a side of Dana we'll never know from our limited holiday, milestone interactions, but our focus is Jane. We've tried to cheer Jane up by offering to take her to dinner among other activities, but she's been hurting, which is why I'm here. Jane hasn't practiced, at home or the studio, since the reception. And I don't want to invade her space at her studio by telling anyone there, in case she doesn't want anyone to know. She asked me to return the white silks and costume after being so excited to receive them. She also said she's going to take an extended break from aerial photography to reconsider if she wants to continue. Aside from aerial photography, she's taken a break from seeing non-aerial friends too, choosing to pretty much keep to herself. We would appreciate any advice from fellow aerialists on how to lift her spirits. We remind her of how we're proud of her, along with the many compliments she received, but she's asked for space and to not talk about it. We're going to respect that and let time do its thing, but we'll consider any advice from other aerialists who can relate to the time and work she put in. Sorry for this being so long, but we appreciate anyone who reads and takes the time to reply. Comments from the first post. Some meat with skin. This is a rare story on this site where everyone, except the villain, does everything right. If this happened to an adult or even an older teenager, she would probably still be hurt, but be able to see that Dana is the one with the issue. But at 16, she's still forming her idea of herself. It sounds like she's taking this all on as a reflection of herself. I'm not someone who can be in the spotlight. My desire to perform hurts my family. I would really consider therapy. You could say all the right things to her, and I bet you have, but at 16 it's hard to hear your mom. Alternatively, and I'm sorry to say this, but is it possible that Dana's new husband gave Jane any inappropriate attention? That might explain why Dana is so upset when she presumably should have known exactly what to expect, although certainly wouldn't excuse it. If there were any opportunities for Jane and the new husband to be alone, I would really look into that also, because it would also explain why Jane hasn't practiced since the reception, even though the drama started a few days later. It is an extreme place to go, but I would just ask yourself if there was an opportunity for him to be inappropriate because she is withdrawing from her entire social life. When I was a teenager, driving up to the next city helped me sometimes. Want to take a drive? Is still a question I ask myself when I feel stuck and hopeless. Go to the big aquarium and get cannolis at the outlet mall or something equally random. Maybe she'll open up or get out of her head, or maybe y'all will just have a nice day. Lots of love to you and your family. Mistral 19. Jealousy is horrible, and Dana has just made herself look bad to anyone that came to the wedding. Also, just for reference, I have performed at multiple weddings and have always had a white costume. It suits the theme and is no way comparable to a wedding dress. Leslie Barbnope. I always see aerialists in white at weddings. Take comfort in the internet OP, and hopefully they can use it as a defense with Dana. If she wants to be that way, just post the receipts of how she asked her what to wear, etc., if she's willing to say that for a 16-year-old. Or let it go. It'll pass, because I promise Dana will have some new crazy thing to do very soon. These types always do. Chelsea Sphere 89. The bride is petty, immature and ridiculous. First off, you must see that. Help her see it too if she doesn't already. When people show you who they are, listen. This is a painful, but valuable lesson that your daughter is learning very early in her performance teaching career. Just like any obstacle or difficulty in life standing between us and the things we desire, she has the choice to either let it beat her down, or let it lift her up and make more determined than ever. If she truly wants this and does eventually go on to be an aerial coach and/or performer, she will face even more challenges. This is only serving to prepare her to face those. Making art is vulnerable. Sometimes people won't like it. But that tells you more about them than about you most of the time. We'll love dogs. Dana wanted her wedding to be all about her, which is fair to an extent, but obviously not to this extent, and I think she was happy to have a beautiful performance done for her, but forgot that people will congratulate the performer, rather than the person who hired the performer. Given how extreme the response was, I would be a bit worried what someone else mentioned about the outside chance that Dana's husband said did something inappropriate, but my guess, and hope, is it's just a general attention thing. Regardless, it sounds like you and Dana's parents are handling things as best you can. Defending your daughter but respecting her privacy and boundaries sounds exactly like the right thing to do. Well done you. I would just continue to be there for your daughter in a low-pressure way and make sure she knows she has safe people to talk to whenever she's ready. Maybe see if there are any non-aerial activities any of her friends are down to do with her. Maybe something like rock climbing, which can feel less performance-oriented and attention-grabbing but can still feel fun for an aerialist because there's a fair amount of strength crossover. Hopefully she'll be comfortable with aerial photography again in future, but I think just trying to help her not socially withdraw too much would be good for her well-being for now. So sorry she's going through this. She sounds like a great kid and a very talented aerialist. Update. Before I get into what's happened since my last post, I want to thank everyone who took the time to comment. 2 pieces of advice really stood out, and I'll get to them shortly. Since my original post, Dana's Facebook post is gone. I don't know if she deleted it or enough people reported it for Facebook to remove it, but we're glad it's gone. She never apologized to us, or Jane, or even bothered to call, so our position on being permanently done with Dana stands. My husband and I made a post on my Facebook addressing the lies she spewed about our daughter, and we shared photo proof of Dana's text where she approved of Jane's white costume from links we sent, not to mention the song choice she sent us too. Better yet, Dana's mother reposted it on her account, which really surprised me. Dana's mother wrote that they loved Jane's act and that they disapproved of Dana's actions. My husband and I also made sure that Jane was okay with us addressing it on Facebook, and she said it was fine. Normally, I wouldn't use Facebook to address drama if aimed at me, but since this involves a grown adult attacking a minor, we felt the need to address it publicly because she disparaged her publicly, and Jane will remember whether we stood up for her or not years from now. I had a chance to speak with Dana's mother since my original post on the phone, and she spoke to Dana again after our last call. Dana reiterated how she regretted asking Jane to perform, but she harped on the standing ovation that bothered her the most. Dana told her that she expected Jane to get some polite applause, but that the overwhelming response really set her over the edge because she expected the loudest cheers to be when she and her husband entered the reception, but that went to Jane instead. Dana and her husband also received a great reception when they entered the reception, but Jane's performance did too, and Dana didn't expect it. Heck, even Jane was surprised by it too. She never received a standing ovation from a solo act before. But Dana's mother believes that if Dana had asked someone to sing who received a similar reception, Dana's jealousy would have been all the same. Someone suggested seeing if Jane would be interested in speaking to a therapist given how hurtful Dana's comments could be for a teen, and Jane said she's open to it so long as it isn't a counselor at school because, as of now, she doesn't want anyone at school or her studio to know about the incident, and she vaguely told the coach who helped her choreograph that it went fine. We will respect her privacy request as it's her right to control the narrative. But in the same vein, I suggested therapy for Dana to Dana's mother since her reaction might be a bigger insecurity, and she said she'd ask. The other thing someone suggested was the possibility of Dana's husband, or anyone, making an inappropriate comment to Jane during the reception that made her shut down and not want to see friends or practice days before Dana's post. My husband decided to ask her, and Jane said no when he did. If something happened, perhaps she'd be more comfortable telling a therapist with time. But on the bright side, she said she might want to try a different aerial studio because she doesn't want to answer questions about how it went, or share a video, at her home studio, so we will help her find somewhere new as she asked. We hope she doesn't permanently leave her current studio because she has friends and coaches who are supportive, and she performs with that studio's troupe at festivals gigs. But I personally understand the need to sometimes go somewhere where nobody knows you for a break, and we hope that that will help her. She hasn't said definitely yet. But if we do, we'll take her. She still wants an extended break from aerial photography in the meantime. But even if or when she goes back, she said she may never want to perform again and would rather do it leisurely. One of the reasons she doesn't want to return to her home studio where she's a part of their troupe. She asked if we'd tell her troupe coach that she won't perform with them anymore if it comes to it. And if that's what she wants down the road, then we will. Hopefully time heals this wound and helps her at least keep the friends she has there, but we can only hope. Comments from the update. Fluffykins_pie. I'm so glad that you and the rest of the family are backing Jane up as much as possible. Hopefully the support you show her now will eventually win out over Dana's hateful behavior. I also hope that Dana actually gets therapy, because going after a minor like that was beyond out of line. Maybe the suggestion coming from her own mom will make Dana reevaluate and make some changes. But regardless, it sounds like you guys are doing a great job parenting. I'm so sorry this happened, but the absolute best thing you can do is just keep showing Jane that you have her back and it's her decision what she decides to do from here. We'd be happy to have her back if and when she decides to return to the aerial community. Half Angel. I can see the positives in here that have happened since the last post. Thank you for updating. I have been thinking of you all. It does sound like Jane is still blaming herself, and that will need unlocking, as that mindset could spill over into other aspects of her life, stopping her achieving her full potential. She needs to realize that this is bridezilla jealousy that got directed towards her, nothing to do with her, and if an aunt had received that attention, it too would have got squashed. Perhaps angling her to perform is fine, just never a family wedding again. And please ask her again in a few weeks' time if any inappropriate comments were made or done. Sometimes it can take a while to feel comfortable enough to say it out loud. It's not uncommon for boys to take 30 years before they say something. I feel like her coach needs to know that the performance was amazing, but to know that there was fallout afterwards. They don't need to know exactly, but it will help explain the actions and ease the road back there for Jane. Please give her a big hug from me. I child-proofed for my in-laws visit, but my husband thought I was overreacting. Now he's gone further after day 1 with our nephew. Original post: I am at 26F, and my husband is 29M. We have been married for 5 years, and we went to Berlin right after marriage since we both found really well-paying jobs. Meanwhile, both of our families, parents, siblings, etc., still live back in Greece, and we usually visit back occasionally. Now me and my husband don't have any children, and we don't plan to have any. We enjoy buying expensive things and experiencing things we never got to as children, such as nice furniture in our home, going to exotic restaurants with friends, travel, hobbies, and generally just our lives with each other exactly the way it is. But that's just how my husband thinks. His family is very traditional, and every married couple has at least one kid. This time my husband invited my Bill and CL to visit us with their 3-year-old son for 2 weeks. This would be the first time they've traveled with their son, and the first time we would be hosting our nephew at our home. Now our nephew is known to be going through the terrible twos and has been throwing tantrums and breaking things lately, so I did some child-proofing in our home a day before my in-laws were due to arrive. I removed all the glass and ceramic decor. I swapped out our linen tablecloth for a plastic one. I locked up our intoxication devices. I also covered our sofas with a plushy fabric cover. Our sofa's fabric is white cashmere, because my nephew likes to snack while watching TV, and we can always take it outside and dust off food crumbs. I also changed my maid's schedule to come in 5 days a week instead of 3, so she can help prepare breakfast and make sure the house is tidy. However, when my husband saw all of my changes, he kind of got upset. He told me he felt that I was preparing our house as if we were hosting messy and uncivilized people. And asked me why I don't make these changes when our friends in Berlin who have kids come over for dinner. He also said that he's never seen our friends make these sorts of changes in their own home for their kids. I don't understand this comparison at all. Coming over for dinner for 3 hours and staying at a place for a couple of weeks is very different. And we've visited our in-laws enough to see how chaotic their home can get, to the point where my Bill and SIL keep mostly plastic items in their homes for convenience. AITA. Top comments. Tulip afternoon, NTA. Instead of worrying the entire visit that their kid could ruin something expensive, the visiting parents can rest assured that the space has been child-proofed. As long as all the changes don't make the space uncomfortable, for example squeaky plastic couch covers or all decor being hidden so the place is bare, I think it makes a lot of sense. You are making the visit less stressful for everyone. Horror reveal 7618. He told me he felt that I was preparing our house as if we were hosting messy and uncivilized people. He's quoting the definition of a toddler here. OOP is voted NTA Update 1. Same post. Edit. We hadn't spoken since we had our fight last night, and my in-laws are supposed to be landing in the morning. My husband brought food from a restaurant I liked and told me he wanted to apologize. He told me he overreacted because he wasn't admitting to himself how different his brother is as a person ever since he became a dad, and that his life is going in a very different direction with more financial hardships too, and that makes him angry and helpless. He told me he misdirected his frustration at me and thought what I did was really nice, especially since he is more finicky than I am. I tried my best to make him feel not guilty and responsible for the lives and decisions of other grown-ups. But I'm so relieved he came around on his own. Update 2. Same post. Edit 2. So guys, it's officially day 1 of the in-laws visit, and my husband has now gone an extra step and put away most of the lamps in our house because they are glass and super dangerous for a toddler to be around. We have about 35 'cause we hate ceiling lights. When we picked up our in-laws from the airport and were driving them back, my nephew accidentally poured a bag of chips all over the back seat and floor mats. Everyone just laughed, but I know my husband was horrified inside, and now he's been vacuuming the backseat area for 2 hours now, lol. Oh, and in-laws super appreciated our baby proofing. Am I the asshole for calling my father's wife a creep after she crossed boundaries with my daughter? Original. My 32F father, 60s, has been married to Sasha. Fake name, 40s, for almost a decade. I was already an adult when they started seeing each other, so I never had much of a relationship with her. That said, Sasha was nice and thoughtful, though a bit annoying at times, and I never had any problems with her. I now have a husband, 34M, and 2 kids, 9M and 4F. Sasha is very fond of my children. Especially my daughter. That became very suffocating pretty quickly, so we started setting some boundaries. She never overstepped them. In January, my father and Sasha decided to go on a trip to Disney World, and invited us to join them. We decided to go to celebrate our son's 9th birthday. I quickly regretted coming along. Sasha spent the entire trip fussing over my daughter in ways that overstepped almost every boundary we'd set. Examples include, Sasha bought a mini ears tiara. She wanted me to buy my daughter an identical one so they could match. My daughter didn't like the tiara, so I bought her a Donald Duck hat instead. Sasha got her the tiara anyway, and was upset that she didn't want to wear it. My father and Sasha went shopping in between parks. I told them not to buy my kids anything, as we still had shopping to do and didn't want to risk making our bags too heavy. Still, Sasha returned with 5 bags of clothing for my daughter, and 2 for my son, saying she couldn't resist it. My daughter wanted a Belle costume to wear at the parks, as that's her favorite princess. Sasha tried to convince us to get her an Ariel costume instead, because that's her favorite. I explained that we never watched The Little Mermaid at home because my daughter is scared of Ursula. Sasha insisted on taking dozens of pictures with my daughter in front of the castle at Magic Kingdom. She also took some with my son, but not nearly as many. She tried to convince us to take our daughter to Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique. We refused because the prices are crazy and we'd already bought her the Belle costume. She offered to pay, but we held our ground. I later found out Sasha tried to make a reservation anyway, but there was no availability. When we took our daughter to Slinky Dog Dash, her first roller coaster, Sasha tried to sit next to her. My daughter wanted to sit with me, so we switched. She tried to do the same thing in other attractions. At the Muppets Theater, she tried to get my daughter to sit in her lap. Sasha also tried to pick her up while we met some of the characters. There were more instances. The final straw for me, however, was the last park day of the trip. We were at Magic Kingdom. My husband suffered a minor injury and I had to take him to the first aid station. The kids wanted to go to the Peter Pan ride, so my dad and Sasha offered to take them in the meantime. However, according to my father, the line was too long. So instead, Sasha suggested the Little Mermaid ride, assuring my kids Ursula wasn't on it. Actually, there's a pretty big Ursula animatronic there. My daughter was still sobbing and hugging her brother when we reunited. When we flew back home, I told my father that we'd no longer take our children on trips with Sasha due to her behavior. He got extremely angry. He said his wife loved my kids, thought about what they'd like to do at every moment of the trip and that we should be grateful to have her in our lives. I lost my temper at that. I told him Sasha was a fucking creep, and that they should be grateful I was still okay with them even seeing my children after her actions during the trip. We ended up having a huge fight after that. It's been weeks since we returned home, and my father is still angry at me and my husband. Sasha has texted me a few times. She says she's sorry if she made me uncomfortable, but that she loves my kids and hoped to use the trip to spend more time with them. To be honest, I don't think I'm the here. But I do think I might have overreacted. I believe there's a chance Sasha's actions were motivated by love and she truly did have good intentions. AITA. Update. Hey everyone, I'm ready to give you an update. I read your comments and came to the following conclusion. As much as Sasha's behavior towards my children angered me and freaked me out, calling her a creep was the wrong reaction to have. That said, I think it's best for my family to distance itself from Sasha for the time being. And at the very least, my previous decision to avoid future trips with her based on the Disney trip is still the best course of action. Sasha's pushiness, tendency to override my and my husband's parenting and blatant favoritism towards my daughter were much worse when the kids were younger. After my daughter's birth, she began to focus too much attention on her and almost none on my son. I gave more examples of that in the comments on my original post. That's the reason we set boundaries in the first place. Her fixation on my daughter also bothers me. When we had the boundary conversation with my father and Sasha, she told us that she'd always wondered what having a daughter would be like. She'd also defined herself as child-free before, so I was never certain what to think of that. Either way, that reassured me and my husband that we were doing the best for our kids. Those boundaries had never been overstepped. Then we went on the Disney trip and most of them were completely ignored. Many of you pointed out that she might have gotten carried away, or that Disney is exciting and she wanted to make sure my kids had the best experience, etc. There are 2 things I'll say to that. The first is that whatever Sasha's reasons were, she still overstepped our boundaries. When we first set those, we told her that doing so would have consequences. Disney or not, I don't see a reason to make an exception. Secondly, she wasn't trying to ensure my kids had the best experience. She was pushing them to fulfill her fantasy of what their Disney trip should look like. She repeatedly ignored my children's wishes in favor of her own, despite them both being very clear about what they wanted and didn't want. Sasha also continually favored my daughter, including during my son's birthday, and fussed over her in ways that made her uncomfortable. And I still haven't forgiven the Little Mermaid thing. My daughter is a bit shy and takes a while to open up to most people, so knowing her trust was broken like that angers me in ways I can't describe. To put it in simpler terms, my children aren't props. And whoever treats them as such will, at the very least, be put in timeout. I called my father and Sasha on Saturday. I apologized for calling Sasha a creep, but told them that we needed some time apart. They won't see my family until my younger sister's birthday in late April. If that goes well, they'll be invited to my daughter's 5th birthday party in May. After that, we'll slowly work on re-establishing contact. I also said that if they overstepped our boundaries again, the consequences would be more dire. My father didn't take it well. I don't care. Sasha sent me a text with more apologies, followed by a request to at least FaceTime my kids every now and then. I said no. And to those who said my controlling behavior ruined the trip, my kids had an amazing time at Disney World. They're both still talking about it. My daughter keeps asking us to put her pictures with the characters she met up on the wall, and my son says he had the best birthday ever. I think that's it. Thank you for your advice and support on my first post. Update 2. Last time I posted here, I mentioned that my father and Sasha wouldn't see my children until my younger sister's birthday. The party took place last weekend, and we didn't attend. These 2 months of NC worked fine, but not great. My father respected my wishes, to my surprise, but Sasha kept trying to find ways to talk to my children. She'd call me under the guise of needing to ask me something, only to later say, "By the way, are the kids around? I want to say hi." Every time she tried that, I'd remind her of what I'd told her back in March. This must have happened almost a dozen times, which was enough for my husband and I to start debating on skipping the party. After speaking to our kids, we decided not to go. They both said they missed my father, but clearly didn't want to see Sasha. We thought about attending and just distancing them from her while there, but risking making our children uncomfortable wasn't worth it. My son even asked if we could see their aunt somewhere else, without Sasha around. My husband and I explained the situation to my sister. She was upset, but mostly because she hadn't seen the kids in a while. We all went to dinner at her favorite restaurant the day after her party. I also called my father and told him we wouldn't go to the birthday party. He reacted better than I expected, but we still had a short fight about it. He claimed that I had promised we'd let Sasha see the kids after 2 months, called me unfair and said he was entitled to have a relationship with his grandchildren. I immediately denied that. Though I tried to sugarcoat it at first, I eventually gave him the truth. My kids don't want to see his wife, and I won't force them to. My father and I had a long talk. I told him how much Sasha's actions at the Disney trip upset my children, as well as how uncomfortable me and my husband felt. I admitted I don't trust his wife at all, and I don't think I ever truly will. He said that while he still thought I was overreacting, he understood I wanted to protect my kids. My dad also told me about how these 2 months of NC were for them. Apparently, Sasha started talking about my kids, mostly my daughter, a lot more than usual. She'd mention things and places she thought they would like. My father was aware of one of the times she called me, but thought it was a one-time thing. She wanted to give my daughter a gift at my sister's birthday party. He said he didn't know why. At one point, she told him she wanted to plan another family vacation with the kids, even though I told them they're not traveling with Sasha anymore. Learning all of that just made me more certain that I can't trust this woman around my children. For now, I intend to remain LC with my father and NC with Sasha. My daughter told me she wanted her grandpa at her birthday party a few weeks from now, so I told him that he was invited, but Sasha wasn't. He agreed. To be honest, I don't trust my father after all of this. I'm allowing him to come because that party will take place at my home, which is easier for me to control. If he tries to bring Sasha, they'll both be kicked out, and it will take a long time for me to consider letting him near my kids again. My father hasn't told me how his wife is reacting to this. My sister told me that during her party, Sasha asked her to tell me she wanted to talk. I'm not reaching out to her, nor do I plan to respond if she attempts to contact me. Both me and my husband have blocked her. My children are doing great. They still talk about how much fun they had at Disney. My daughter's been saving money, putting coins in her piggy bank, for us to go back. On a completely different note, I'm pregnant again. This was completely unplanned. I always said I wanted 2 kids at most, and the third would have to be a huge accident. But my husband and I are ecstatic. I'm still in the first trimester, so not a lot of people know. We're brainstorming ways to tell our kids. Overall, I'm happy with my life right now. And as much as I wish this Sasha situation had never happened, I feel like a better parent after dealing with it. I have never been more confident in my abilities to protect my children than I am now. I don't think I'll update again anytime soon. Once again, thank you for all the support you've given me. I wish you the best. Update 3, September 3rd, 2024, 7 months later. First of all, my father didn't bring Sasha to my daughter's birthday party back in May. I didn't really think he would. I'd made it very clear I wouldn't tolerate that, but I'd be lying if I said your comments didn't make me a little paranoid. Secondly, I've just entered my 3rd trimester, and the baby will be here in November. The kids are ecstatic. I'm having another girl, but my husband and I are not sharing the sex until she's born. This has nothing to do with our families, it's just something we've also done with our first 2. Everyone, including Sasha, knows I'm pregnant. We announced it a couple months ago. I had no problem with my father telling her, though he did ask if he could. I didn't hear much about her reaction, but according to my father, she was happy for me. My children still don't want to see Sasha, and I'm still not forcing them to. I've unblocked her and put her on mute instead, but she hasn't made any attempts to contact me. We've continued meeting my father without his wife, and I think it's been working out. My relationship with him isn't fantastic, but it's much better than it was earlier this year. Last week, I saw Sasha for the first time in months. My cousin threw a party at her place. My husband and I attended, as did my father and Sasha. I knew she'd be there, but since the kids weren't with us, son had a sleepover, daughter stayed with my mom, I didn't really have anything against seeing her. They arrived sometime after we did. My husband and I spoke with them for a few minutes, and it was less awkward than I expected. Sasha asked me about the baby's sex, and I told her we weren't telling anyone, which, again, is what we've always done. About 20 minutes later, my father told me they had to go. I thought it was weird that they were leaving so soon, but I didn't think much of it at the time. He called me a few days ago and we spoke for a long time. My father is difficult to talk to, so the following is what I gathered from the conversation. He said they left early because Sasha was holding back tears after she saw me. She was sobbing by the time they got to the car. They later had a discussion about it, and Sasha admitted she wanted kids. She married my dad knowing he didn't but hoped he would change his mind. Apparently, when my son was born, Sasha tried to drop "I want one" hints to my father. He didn't notice it, so she gave up. According to my father, Sasha told him she loved my kids equally, but my daughter was special, because she always imagined herself as a girl mom. That's also the reason why she became such a suffocating presence when my daughter was a baby. When my husband and I started setting boundaries, Sasha realized she was overstepping and agreed to abide by them. To her credit, I think she did a mostly okay job back then, but the favoritism was still obvious enough that my son noticed it. The trip we took was a turning point because Sasha's dream of having a daughter included taking her to Disney World and having her do all the things she liked to do there when she was young. She told my father that having my daughter there was so exciting that she forgot everything I'd said about not overstepping. Sasha wanted a mother-daughter trip and tried to use my child for it. Sasha said she regretted her actions during the Disney trip, but only because she lost access to my children due to them. And seeing me at the party, all pregnant and pretty, my father's words, not sure she actually said that, was what drove her over the edge. I remember reading some comments theorizing that this was what was going on, but I still didn't really expect this. My father said he was telling me all this because his wife wasn't doing well, and he'd understand if I wanted to keep my kids away from her. Didn't expect that, either. I don't know what the future of their relationship will be, and I don't think my father does either. All I know is that if Sasha still wants to have kids, it almost definitely will not be with my father. Before all this, I was pondering about my third child's future in relation to Sasha. Now, I sincerely don't want her to be a part of my baby's life. This isn't a final decision, but I've been speaking to my husband about it, and he agrees with me. I don't think she's a bad person. I got some baby stealer comments on my previous update, but I don't think that's what's happening here either. But if the Disney trip proved anything to me, it's that Sasha is willing to be extremely selfish and disrespectful to get what she wants, even when my kids are involved. A couple months ago, my husband and I had a conversation with our son about the subject. He told us he dislikes Sasha for 2 reasons. She favors his sister and she doesn't listen to them. Honestly, that's all I need to know. Looking back at my own childhood, I feel like I was never allowed to have boundaries. I was always expected to put my schedules and preferences aside for others. It's important to me that my children don't go through that. If they don't want to see Sasha, they don't have to. I think that's all I want to say here. I'm doing well. I actually got some great news from work recently. My kids are thriving, and I'm excited to meet my third baby. Again, thank you guys. Update 3, new update. November 23, 2024, 9 months later. I'm happy to announce my daughter was born 2 weeks ago. She arrived a little earlier than expected, but she's perfect. My older kids are in love with their baby sister. And as much as I didn't plan to have a third child, I am truly glad I did. As I mentioned the last time I posted, my husband and I didn't announce the sex in advance when our first 2 kids were born. This time, I decided to give my father a heads up. After I found out about the whole girl mom thing, I became worried about how Sasha would react to the news I was having another daughter. Telling my father ahead of her birth would give him more time to prepare. So about a month ago, my father told Sasha I was having another girl. As expected, she didn't take it well. A few days after I gave birth, my father told me that he and Sasha were separating. They're not sure about divorce, but he thinks that's where they're headed. Sasha started talking to my father about having children around the time I made my last post. According to him, they started fighting about it when she tried to convince him to get his vasectomy reversed. I didn't know he had one. My father said Sasha cried when he told her I'd have another daughter, and they decided to separate a few days later. I'm not very informed about the situation, but my father did state that the decision was mutual. About a week ago, Sasha texted me. It started with her congratulating me for my daughter's birth, then evolved into what seemed like a farewell letter to my children. Not much about them stood out to me, though "you'll never understand the love I feel for your children" was an interesting statement. She talked about how much it hurt to know she'd never meet my baby, or watch my daughter become a big sister. Sasha told me I had tortured her by keeping my kids away, and it was that distance that made her accept she needed to be a mother. She deleted the text a few minutes after I finished reading it. I decided not to reply. I haven't been thinking much about the situation lately, but the more I do, the dumber I feel for not realizing Sasha wanted kids sooner. I remember she started talking about my father's future grandchildren long before I got pregnant with my son. Her behavior around my daughter, at least before the Disney trip, always felt weird to me, but I still never made the connection. I still don't dislike Sasha, but I think she brought this situation upon herself. As much as I recognize my father is far from innocent, he's always been very clear about not wanting more children. Sasha is 47 years old, and while I don't think I'd want to have kids at that age, I know people who have. If that's what she wants, then I wish her luck. We're also officially moving to Europe in 2025. The work-related news I mentioned in my previous update were really, really great. My husband and I had been hoping for an opportunity like this for a while. We're helping the kids make arrangements to maintain contact with their friends. Luckily, my daughter's best friend is my goddaughter. This will be my last update. I'm busy with my baby, and I'll definitely have a busy 2025 as well, so I don't intend to write about this anymore. I want to thank you all for the advice, reassurance and kindness you have shown me. My dad refused to spend Christmas with my Bill, and now my mum is blaming my wife for everything. What should I do? Original post. This is a throwaway account as I have work colleagues on my mind that I don't want to know about my family drama, and spelling will be rubbish as I'm fuming right now. Obligatory names have been changed. So for the backstory, I 36F and married to the love of my life 36FK. We met when we were 17, she was out and proud whilst I was still in the closet, so we didn't start dating until I came out at 21. We got married in 2019 and have an adopted 4-year-old son Jack. This comes in relevant in a minute. My sister 27F Sarah has a long-term boyfriend 28M Steve who the family cannot stand. They've been together for 8 years and the whole family has hated him from the first time we met him. He is rude, obnoxious, arrogant and all in all a crappy human being. He's also someone that likes to claim that he is just honest, but if someone is honest back to him he flips out and sulks like a toddler. In fact, my toddler is better behaved than him. He isn't abusive to Sarah and doesn't direct these comments towards her, it's just the rest of us. He's actually a good partner to her and treats her well, which is his one redeeming quality. My dad and Kay hate him the most and will do anything to avoid him at family gatherings. Kay usually just ignores him and brushes off anything he says to her as she doesn't like conflict. However, there have been a few occasions that she has said something back, but it's usually said in a joking manner which amuses my dad to no end. My mum is a peacekeeper and will do anything to avoid drama, so she just changes the topic whenever he starts, but she and my grandparents all hate him just as much as the rest of us. Sarah is the only one that obviously doesn't hate him. Our son's birth mother Tess was Kay's best friend, who sadly died in 2021. This was a real shock as she had an underlying heart condition that she didn't know about and simply went to sleep one night and never woke up. Jack had been left alone in his cot all day screaming for his mom before Kay got worried that Tess wasn't answering her texts and went to their house to see if she was okay. She found Jack in his cot and Tess in her bed. We adopted Jack as no one in Tess's family was in a position to take him in. We raise him as our own, but he knows who Tess is. Obviously this is a very sensitive topic for Kay as it was so traumatic for her and Jack. Now, on to what happened last weekend. It was the anniversary of Tess's death on Saturday, so Kay, Jack and I went to visit her grave. Kay is always quiet after going to see her, and this time of year is especially hard for her. On Sunday we had a family gathering at my parents' house. These happen every couple of months as just a catch-up for everyone. At first nothing was out of the ordinary. Kay and my dad were off to the side talking as usual, only I could see that Kay was obviously struggling, so my dad and her went for a walk so she could clear her head. This is something they have done before, so nothing too unusual. However, Steve had an issue with this and asked why they had left and why he wasn't invited to walk with them. I explained that Tess and Kay just needed a minute. This wasn't good enough for Steve though, and he said she should have gotten over it by now. At this my granddad, who is naturally a very quiet guy, said that his best friend had died over 20 years ago and he still had days where he missed him so much it hurt. You don't just get over something like that. Steve shut at that. Kay and my dad got back and she was in a much better mood. We all sat down at the table for our late lunch and started chatting. Everything was fine at first until Steve started trying to butt into Kay's conversation with my granddad. When it was obvious that they weren't going to include him, he very loudly stated, "This is bullshit. She's getting all the attention of everyone because her friend died 3 fucking years ago. Get over it for fuck's sake, we're all sick of hearing about it." The whole table went silent and I took one look at Kay and knew she was about to go off on Steve. Only it didn't happen the way I thought. Rather than exploding at him, she looked at him very calmly and said that her and Granddad weren't talking about Tess. They were making plans to take him to the Christmas markets, but if he wants to be a dick then no problem. She then went on to say to him that everyone in the family hates him because he's a toxic narcissistic fuckwad. That whenever he can't come to a family gathering the whole family is much happier. That there is a reason he has no friends and that his own family can't stand to be around him. That reason is that he's rotten from the inside out and that Tess may have only been on this planet for 32 years, but she made a bigger impact on people that he would have if he lived until he was 150. That her funeral was rammed with people because she was so loved, whereas he'd be lucky if anyone other than Sarah was at his. After that, she got up and went to the back garden and I followed her. A few minutes later my dad came out and said that he'd told Sarah and Steve to leave. We went back inside and Kay apologized to everyone and said she should have just kept her mouth shut. Everyone other than my mom told her what she had done was right and it was about time someone told him. My dad then found it hilarious that a lesbian had been the one to tell him straight, which lightened the mood a lot. We spent the rest of the afternoon there before going to pick Jack up from Kay's mom's house as she had him overnight on Saturday for us. The reason I'm making this post is that yesterday I got a call from Sarah saying that she and Steve wanted an apology from Kay or they weren't going to Christmas. When I reminded her that we wouldn't be at Christmas either as it is our year to spend it with Kay's mom so it made no difference to us, she got really upset saying that she wanted an apology because Kay was way out of line. I said she wasn't and that I wouldn't even contemplate asking her to apologize because I agreed with everything she said and so did everyone else there. She ended the call and I just went back to work. Then today my dad called me and asked if Kay's mom would mind a few more for Christmas as he was refusing to spend it with Steve so he and my granddad needed someone else to go. Apparently after Sarah had called me she called mom and started ranting and my mom had told my dad to get Kay to apologize, which he said no to and they had an argument and my dad has now decided that he's done with Steve even if that affects his relationship with Sarah. He's not having it anymore. My mom wants Sarah there, and she won't go without Steve so my dad is going somewhere else and my granddad agreed with him. I texted Kay's mom and she said they were welcome so now my mom is furious and saying that my dad and Kay are ripping the family apart. So basically this has turned into a shit show. Kay has said she will apologize if I want her to, just to keep the peace but I've told her no way. Everything she said was true. I just don't know where to go from here and the people in my life all hate Steve so much that Kay could have physically attacked him and they would all still think she is in the right. So that's why I'm asking internet strangers who might have had to deal with difficult family members. What can we do to get into a place where we can be around each other amicably? I'm struggling to see a way right now. Wow, didn't realize how long this got until I went to post it. Sorry about that. Some of OOP's comments. Commenter. For things to be peaceful, Both parties need to want it. Kay did nothing wrong. I wouldn't ever spend another moment with Steve. I would let Sarah know I love her and will see her anytime, anywhere, but I'll never see Steve again. If you have one guest that basically wants to shit on the holiday table, there's no path forward with them. OOP. If it was just Sarah upset, then I wouldn't care, but it's my mom. She tries so hard to keep the whole family together and she is devastated by what's going on. If it wasn't for her, then Sarah could go take a running jump for all I care right now. Sarah. This is the issue, that Steve and Sarah don't see anything wrong in what he's done. It was just him being honest. I would be happier for her to apologize if Steve and Sarah admitted that what he said was in the wrong as well. Without that, I'm being stubborn about it. My dad told Kay he will fall out with her if she apologizes, as she did nothing wrong. There was no screaming or shouting, she said it very calmly. I feel like I'm stuck between making my mom happy and doing what I believe to be right. To another commenter. My sister doesn't see anything wrong in what he says, as he's just being honest, but loses it when someone is honest back. I don't understand her anymore. Mom. Taking the high road and rising above it have been two of my mom's favorite things to say to us over the years. I just feel like enough is enough. He crossed a line this time that he can't come back from. I especially don't want my son around him when he's saying things like that about Tess. To another commenter. If I hear my mom say take the high road one more time, I'm gonna scream. I'm sick of the high road. I've been on it for 8 years. I'm happy on the low road now. Later that day. OOP. Well, I've just found out that my granny and pa, my mom's parents, are going to my uncle's for Christmas and Steve is not invited, so it looks like it's going to be just Mom, Sarah and Steve for Christmas this year. How OOP feels about that? Vindicated, as my mom is like her parents, they're all peacekeepers, and if ever they have had enough, then it just shows that he's not just stepped over the line, he's ran right past it. Mom. Kay's mom has already told her that if she changes her mind, then she is welcome at her house. Even if it's Christmas morning, she is more than welcome. Obviously Steve and Sarah aren't invited at all, but it's good that my mom has the option at least. Later reflection. I have realized that he has been trying to target Kay and my dad's relationship, as they're very close. They have traveled all over the country visiting class car shows together, which Steve has tried to get in on, but he doesn't know anything about cars, so there's no point in him going even if they did like him. I actually think he's been trying to push Kay and I out of the family so that he gets my dad to himself, even though my dad can't stand him. Update post. Hi, I know how much this community loves an update, so I thought I would give you one, as things seem to be sorting themselves out, kind of. After I wrote my last post, a few things happened in the next couple of hours. First thing was that I spoke to my grandparents on my mom's side. They were there when this all happened, but they're like my mom and just constantly try to keep the peace. That's where she gets it from. They were supposed to be spending Christmas with my mom this year, but had changed their minds and decided to spend it with my uncle instead. They have made the decision to not be around Steve either, as he causes too much drama. They asked if they could come and see us and Jack on the 23rd before they head off to my uncle's, which I happily agreed to. This really surprised me and it outright shocked my mom, as like I said, they are the biggest take the high road type people I've ever met, but even they'd had enough. The next thing that happened was my dad called to let me know that Steve and Sarah had now decided that they want Kay to make a public apology in front of the whole family and admit she was lying and that the family loves Steve. He was laughing as he told me this and called them delusional, so any small chance of a superficial apology went out the window. The third thing that happened was Jack getting home from the after-school club with a recorder that I'm sorely tempted to shove up the teacher's backside. So all in all, it wasn't a great day. Through talking to people on here, I also realized that Steve has been trying to push Kay and I out of the family. Organizing trips that he knows we would be able to go on. We wouldn't have gone on them anyway, as a weekend away with him sounds worse than a paper cut to the eyeball, and him constantly trying to get my dad away from Kay whenever we are all together. I think this is because he is jealous of Kay and Dad's relationship, as they're very close and go on trips to classic car shows several times a year together, usually with my granddad as well. Anyway, things went quiet for a few days until the weekend. Our town has a big Christmas fair that runs from November through December, and we always go to it with Mom, Dad, Granddad, and Kay's mom. We decided to cheer my mom up a bit to go on Sunday and then out for dinner after. My mom was told that if Sarah or Steve showed up then we would all leave, and she promised they wouldn't be there. Things were a bit awkward at first, but settled after a while. At one point Jack got my mom and dad to take him on the giant snow slide, and as my mom walked back over to us she had tears in her eyes. I pulled her to one side to see what was going on, and she said that whilst waiting in line, Jack had said he was happy Uncle Steve wasn't here. When my mom asked why, he said that Uncle Steve was a bad man. My mom tried to say that he wasn't, But in typical stubborn 4-year-old fashion, he had argued and said he learned in school that people who say mean things all the time are bad people, and Uncle Steve said mean things all the time, so he was a bad man and that he didn't like him. There had been a case of bullying in his class a few weeks ago and the teacher had done a lesson on how wrong bullying is, so I think that's where this came from. This finally broke through to my mom. If even a 4-year-old can see what a horrible prick the man is, then she had too as well. She said that she felt stuck because she hated Steve and agreed with everything that Kay has said, but she loves Sarah and doesn't want to isolate her. I told her I would always be there for her, but I wasn't putting myself, Jack or Kay through being around Steve again, and she needed to think about what she wants. Not what I want or Dad or Kay or Jack or her parents or Sarah or Steve, but what she wants. She went quiet and then said that Kay's mom had told her she was welcome at hers for Christmas if she wanted to, and that she could decide on Christmas Day if she wanted. Kay's mom would save her a plate. We went back to the group and a little while later I saw Mom and Kay's mom having a deep discussion whilst walking behind us. Neither will say what they talked about, but Mom seemed a bit happier after their talk. They have also been talking since, as yesterday my mom told me that she will be coming to Kay's mom's for Christmas and they've been talking about going shopping together next week. When Mom told Sarah after calling me, Sarah predictably lost her mind and said that Mom was choosing us over her. My mom told her she was choosing to have a good Christmas rather than being belittled and made miserable, all for the sake of Steve and his so-called honesty. Sarah then called me and asked if I was happy that I'd won. She then did the unforgivable and used a few homophobic slurs towards me and Kay and called Jack the bastard of a whore. I ended the call, blocked her everywhere, and then let my family know what had happened and that I never wanted to speak to her again. They're all as appalled as I am, and my granny, Mom's mom, called Sarah and apparently told her she was dead to her as she won't have a bigot in the family. Sarah has been trying to reach out to apologize because she knows she has stepped over the unforgivable line, but I've just kept blocking the fake accounts that she's making on IG. Steve tried reaching out to my dad after this, and when he eventually answered, Steve tried to say that Sarah was just angry and didn't mean it. According to Mom, Dad ended up giving him a verbal lashing and told him that he was the worst thing that had ever happened to Sarah and our family. My dad has told Sarah he is disgusted with her, but will be there for her if she leaves Steve. Until then, good luck. Mom has gone low contact as well, but wants to keep the door open so that Sarah is not completely isolated. I had a few people saying that Steve may be abusive towards Sarah, but I really don't think he is. He usually acts like a dick when the attention isn't on him. He knows that when he says dickish things, then all the attention is on him and he revels in it. After Sarah's outburst, I just think that they're both toxic and feed off each other's toxicity. She lets him get away with the things he says because she gets pleasure out of watching us all bite our tongues and keep quiet. So, Mom's angry, Dad's angry, our 3 grandparents are angry, extended family are angry, and Kay is being my rock, but I can tell she's really angry about what she said towards Jack. I'm just sad and done with it all. At least now I know what she really thinks about Jack, Kay and myself, so there's that. Not the perfect update, but we move on. It will be nice this Christmas to have both sides of the family together for the first time and not have to worry about Steve being a dick, but I'm sad that this is how my relationship with my sister has ended. I'm trying to get into the Christmas spirit, but it's a tough one right now. The only things that make me smile are Kay and Jack being goofy idiots to cheer me up. However, the recorder can go to hell. I curse whoever invented the thing, like seriously, fuck you. Thanks for all the support in my original post and opening my eyes to a few things. Maybe internet strangers are the way to go for advice after all. Hope you all have a good Christmas/holidays. Some of OOP's comments. Commenter, I don't think the dickish Bill and Sarah saga had concluded. I'm glad you'll have a peaceful Christmas in theory. I just think the pair of them are not convinced yet that they're shut out. OOP. It wouldn't surprise me if they try and turn up to my parents for Christmas, but we won't be there so they won't get far. As long as they stay away from me, Kay and Jack, then I don't care what they do. Commenter. Many small children playing recorders with more enthusiasm than skill follow Steve everywhere. OOP. This just made me laugh a little too hard. Thanks for that. Editor's note. Wasn't sure whether to mark this one as concluded or ongoing. I've tentatively marked it as ongoing, but I'm happy to change it.